Well, let's go. We got 3 things to talk about. We got Hell in a Cell.
Yep.
We got
Raw Nitro.
Raw Nitro. Man, let me tell you something about that Hell in a Cell match. That was a pretty good wrestling match.
Still good.
There's times when you always wonder, haven't seen this in many years, is it going to hold up? And you watch it back and you think, that was so much better than I even remembered it.
Not only was it so good, but Hell in a Cell's coming up. And we've got Roman Reigns versus Rusev.
That's not going to be as good.
God bless those men. It won't be this good.
You got Roman Reigns and Rusev, and apparently Charlotte and Sasha also in a cell. I hope no one thinks about trying to go off the top of that thing.
That's not
Hopefully somebody doesn't gig from their top of their forehead to their nose.
Nothing good can happen.
Hey, Craig, if you're going to gig, don't go halfway.
I'm talking with the women, Brian.
You got to go all the way. It's all or nothing, baby. Let me tell you how great this match was. It was really great.
Yeah.
Fuck star ratings, and was it 4 3/4? Was it 5? Who gives a shit?
It was 5.
It was a classic. It was an all-time great match featuring 2 all-time great performers. And I was looking back at it, I was thinking, Shawn and Undertaker had this feud, and Shawn won this Hell in a Cell match. Despite what he looked like at the end, he was the winner in the record books. And then it all came full circle a decade later, 2 decades, 15 years later, when they had their WrestleMania series. And Undertaker got rid of this fucker once and for all. Poetry. The storyline was poetry. The feud was poetry. It was so great. Let me talk about the best part of the match. I'll just do all the talking here for now. You guys ain't saying nothing.
Because interrupting you works so well.
The best part of this match is Shawn just gets his ass handed to him for about 30 minutes. And finally, he cuts off The Undertaker. And he proceeds to do a bunch of moves. And then he does his big comeback. And he does his flying forearm and his kip up and the flying elbow. And he starts tuning up the band. Now, before this happened, he had been backdropped onto the cameraman. So, of course, it was so great because you got to get this cameraman out of here. We must open the door. This cameraman may be dead. Wasn't some bullshit where someone raised the cage or some preposterous deal. We still don't know who raised that one Hell in a Cell years ago. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. I don't even remember the match, but I know we don't know.
I think it was Hunter.
It was never, I think it was Hunter Austin or something.
Austin was involved.
But anyway, the point of this is there was a perfectly logical reason to open up the cage door. The cameraman had been killed.
Not to mention, Shawn wiped him out with falling over the top rope to the floor, but then he proceeded to beat him up.
Sure.
After that.
Point is, the guy needed to be saved. So they sent out Slaughter and his merry band of miscreants, and they open up the door, and they drag this guy's carcass out. And the fucking timing of the moment, and this is not amazing timing, it's just so goddamn smart. The moment they're opening the door to bring the cameraman out, Shawn Michaels has done his full comeback, and he hits the super kick, and the moment he hits the move, the Undertaker sits up. And Shawn realizes, holy fuck, like, I'm fucked. And the fucking door's open. The timing was so great. And he fled for his life. It's just so awesome. Then he gets killed out there. Let me tell you about one other great thing. You guys may have something to say, I'm not sure.
I'm just letting you finish.
Shawn's up on top of the cage, okay? Now, I don't know if you guys remember the Hell in a Cell with Mick Foley. Do you remember that match?
How can you forget it?
He was
seemed to ring a bell.
thrown off the top.
He died twice.
How many times have we seen the footage of that? It's like they're on top of the cage, and then Undertaker grabs him, and he just throws his ass off.
Right.
I mean, it was like spectacular and everything. Mm-hmm. But let's compare it to what happened here. Shawn is on top of the cage, and first, he goes for a pile driver, and he gets backdropped. But he still lands on the cage. It was like, oh, fuck. And the announcers are freaking out like, oh my God, all the metal's, it's about to break. Mm-hmm. And there's a cameraman underneath. To this day, it's never not funny, where this stupid fucker is right under Shawn as he's face down bleeding a gusher. Mm-hmm. And the camera's filming right up at him. And apparently Shawn's blood just like falls down right into the guy's mouth. He goes, oh shit. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's your fault, you dumb motherfucker.
He got on the lens. It's the best part.
That's right. And then Shawn gets punched and he takes another bump and he gets precariously close to the edge. And so then he goes climbing over the edge, and Undertaker grabs his hair, and Shawn's like hanging, and his legs are swinging back and forth.
Feet are waving.
Yep, feet are waving. And so then he's hanging, and he's hanging by two hands. And what do? Well, Undertaker looks at him, and first he stomps on one hand, and now Shawn Michaels is hanging from one hand, and then he stomps on the other hand, and instead of immediately letting go, he stomps on the second hand. Shawn looks behind him, then he lets go, and then he falls like 2 feet through a table. But the fucking thing was built up so well that you may as well have thrown him off like 5 cages.
2 feet.
It was so fucking awesome. He didn't fall far, dude.
It was more than 2 feet.
Maybe it may have been 3.
It was less than 6.
It was less than 6. It was less than off the top of the cage. Anyway, you guys can speak now. Just the best match.
You aren't giving anything here nearly enough credit.
Of course not.
It is so much better than you're making it out to go.
It's impossible.
It is. This, when it was done and I was driving over here, all I was thinking was, I just witnessed wrestling perfection. That was a perfect match from Shawn Michaels. That was a perfect match from The Undertaker. That was a perfect match from Vince McMahon. That was a perfect match by the referee. That was a perfect match by the cameramen, all of them. That was a perfect match by Kane. That was a perfect match by Paul Bearer. That was a perfect match by Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Chyna. Everything involved in this went as well as it possibly could have. I mean, as great as these men are, and as much work went into this, it's still a miracle how much everything was perfect.
It was absolutely perfect.
If they did this 1,000 times, it would be worse 1,000 times.
Not sure about that.
This was...
I saw their 2 Mania matches when they were 15 years older.
Those were good too. But even from the click comes out, and it's Shawn Michaels, and he's, as always, full of himself, having a grand old time. And Taker's doing his entrance, which takes a while. And Taker gets in the ring, and he's calmly removing his robe or cape, whatever that thing was. And they're locking the door. And it dawns on Shawn just what he has gotten himself into.
I am trapped.
He looks at Taker. He looks at this door. He looks at the lock on the door. He's testing the chain. Hunter and Chyna are outside. They're testing the door like, wait a minute, no one told us it would be locked. Come on now. Even though that was made clear in every single promo leading up to this. And Shawn looks up, left, down, right, behind him, anywhere, trying to find any kind of escape route. And of course he can't. So he has no option but to fight. And I know you know this spot, Brian, because I think you wanted to do it in every single match you and I ever did.
Oh, yeah.
The very first spot was, at least when you were a heel, Shawn charges a Taker and ducks a clothesline.
Yep.
But he comes back and runs right into a big boot.
Oh, yeah. Loved it.
Goes flying through the air. And for the next 10 minutes, it sucks to be Shawn Michaels.
Dude, for the next 30 minutes.
I'd forgotten how cartoony he was in the first part of this match. The bumps he was taking, just the overdramatic oversell, almost reminiscent of his match with Hogan. And then it got serious.
I don't know if I'd call it that. It was just amazing.
Ordinarily, I'm a big fan of guys showing emotion throughout the wrestling match. Show me anger, show me excitement, show me despair, show me happiness, whatever. But the fact that for 10 minutes, The Undertaker dismantled this human being, he performed an autopsy for us all on Shawn Michaels' body.
Dude, he's The Undertaker.
With a complete blank stare.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much better. Just throwing him in and out of the ring. By the way, knowing there's the famous bumps Shawn takes in this match, the bump on top of the cage, the bump off the cage of the table. There's 2 or 3 bumps before that are so much worse. When he goes flying out of the ring and takes a flat back bump on the floor, bad times.
You know what, though? What we got to remember is they hadn't changed the rings yet. So I'm watching Shawn Michaels take clotheslines in the middle of the ring and his fucking head bounces off the... How did this guy not... I mean, he must have had 35 concussions in his career.
That is possible.
Probably 10 of them in this match alone.
So Taker's beating him and beating him and beating him. And we just watched that ROH pay-per-view where I was talking about how a lot of guys will just... I'll do a counter-hit move, you do a counter-hit move over and over and over again, and it gets numbing and repetitive. Shawn's taking this beating that is so severe. And even though he's the heel, Taker has the heat on him, and it just works. Trust me. But Shawn needs a hope spot, just to let fans know there's something to watch for. There's still some reason to keep tuning in. So here was Shawn's hope spot. He ducked a punch. Then when he tried to throw a punch of his own, Taker blocked and hit him anyway. But that one duck was just enough to let you know Shawn's still fighting. At last, Shawn is able to dodge a charge. Taker throws himself into the cell, and Shawn's able to get some sustained offense for a while. He climbs the cage and drops an elbow. He drops the stairs on Taker's back. And 2 or 3 times, when Shawn has the heat, 2 or 3 times, cameramen get in his way. And they're always sure to cut to the camera that is in his way so you can see that Shawn turns to him and shoves him and says, "Get the F out of here." Arr. Just to let you know, there's lots of cameramen in this match. There's lots of cameramen in the cell, and they're all in Shawn's way. Shawn hits a pile driver on the flat part of the stairs. That could not have felt good. He grabs a chair. They got so much out of one chair shot to the back. They killed like a minute of Shawn just teasing this and teasing this and teasing this. Well, finally whacking him and getting one cover. And Taker kicks out. So we get the spot where Shawn charges and Taker backdrops him over and he lands on the cameraman. This is, again, not the first time a cameraman has gotten in Shawn's way. So between that and the fact that Shawn is an asshole anyway, it makes sense when Shawn just beats the crap out of this guy. Tears into him, goes back in and goes into Shawn Michaels comeback mode. Forearm, kip up, elbow, the whole works. And Sarge is coming out, and as Brian noted, the timing on all this was so perfect. So perfect. Vince is saying that man has a family. We apologize to his family. One of the announcers said something about he'll probably file a lawsuit. So they're getting him out of the cage. And then Shawn hits the super kick. And Taker does the zombie sit-up. And when Shawn does the kick, it's not like he stopped and turned his back and posed. He hits the kick, and in the natural motion of hitting the kick, spins around, just like it does a full 360. But in that part, that fraction of a second his back was turned is when Taker does the sit-up. So by the time Shawn turns around, he has thrown his kick, and Taker has already sat back up. And now Shawn panics. He tries to flee. They're fighting outside the cage. Shawn does a drop kick, which means he jumps in the air and lands flat on his back on the cement. Jesus. Tries another one. Taker catches him and goes for a slingshot.
I think Taker was supposed to catch him on the first one, and he didn't.
I remember you and I having this discussion once. Shawn's feet go into his chest.
I'm pretty sure that doesn't matter.
It matters for Shawn's chiropractor. Taker does a slingshot. Shawn gigs from the floor, goes flying up, hits a gusher, blood everywhere. And as they're fighting, blood gets on multiple camera lenses, which is just the best thing that can happen in a wrestling match. Taker slingshots him in the cage, throws him into the cage over and over and over again. Finally, Shawn is so desperate, he hits a low blow. It's time to fight dirty or die. With nothing else to do, he's tried everything. He's hit his best move on the guy, hit him with a chair, and he's still fighting. It's time to run away. It's time to run to the top of the cage. Because everything else had failed. Why not?
Because he's a stupid heel.
Perhaps The Undertaker will not be able to climb.
You know what? Looking at The Undertaker, it's not a bad strategy.
No.
Well, no, it is a bad strategy. But you would think it's not a bad strategy.
He's scurried right up there because he's Taker. But yes, if I was fighting a 6'8" monster and had the opportunity to go climb something away from him, that might be my plan. Taker had no problem climbing this cage. And there were not the Mick Foley handholds in the thing either. This is just a chain link fence he climbed up. So they get up there. The crowd's never seen anything like this before in their lives. And it's all just... I'm sure it didn't feel good landing on the steel mesh, but it had some give. It had some bounce. So there's bumping up there once or twice Shawn does. There's a press slam up there. There's the backdrop up there. And as you noted, Taker just hits one punch. Just a punch. And Shawn goes flying through the air and rolls over to the side of the edge to very carefully lower him up into position where he's got his feet on like the crossbar halfway down and his feet on the very top, or his hands on the very top. And yeah, Taker stood over him for a while. First he grabbed his head and Shawn's feet waved. And Taker says, "Hell with this." And he raises his right foot high into the air and he pauses and he brings it down like a pile driver on Shawn Michaels' hand. And Shawn starts waving his hand in agony and pain. And then Taker does the same to the other hand. And Shawn is able to balance on that cross beam for just a second, just enough to wave his arms backwards and go windmilling through the table, which explodes. And he is left unmoving in a pile of rubble and blood. This is the best match I ever saw, I've decided, just now. They go down and Shawn's done and Taker's just having fun. Beal him on the announce desk, press slam him off it, drag him back over to the door. Shawn now, he can barely crawl. His own hair is sticking to the blood that is sticking and clotting over his face. He is a savage, carnal wreck. Taker throws him in the ring, choke slam off the middle rope, He grabs his chair. This whole thing started when Shawn had a chair shot at SummerSlam. It's time for Taker's ultimate revenge. I don't want to say I enjoy seeing guys get hit in the head with chairs, but it fit. It just fit. Shawn's doomed. All that's left is for Taker to make it official and hit his finisher and pin him. But then the lights go out. And there's mysterious organ music playing that no one had heard at this point in 1997. And it's Kane's theme, and out walks Paul Bearer with the debut of the Big Red Machine. Kane power walks down to the ring. Easily tears the door off its hinges. Just yanks it off the cell. The cell that had kept Shawn Michaels out and Triple H, or Shawn Michaels in and Triple H out. He gets in, and there's Taker watching all this, and he sees Paul Bearer. He knows what Paul's been promising and threatening for months now. This is his younger brother, Kane. And Taker, last he heard, his younger brother Kane died in a fire, these many years ago. And Taker is bewildered, he is shocked, he is stunned, and I think he's also heartbroken. This was his brother, back after all these many years. And somewhere inside the dead man, there's a little heart beating with familial bonds.
It's making this story better than it is.
They have this stare down. Taker's beside himself, doesn't know what to do. I swear he was on the verge of tears. The Undertaker. Kane sets off his corner pyro. There's bright fire everywhere. Taker is distracted. He turns around. Kane picks him up, spins him over, displays him to the crowd on all four sides of the ring, drops him with a tombstone. Message sent. He departs. Now, I'm not sure what happened to the ref. I guess he got exploded in the fire, but he was down. And Shawn drags himself out of a puddle of his own blood to place a hand on the Undertaker and lie in a new puddle of his own blood. And the ref crawls over and does the most dramatic 3 count of all time. And officially, Shawn wins. Now, on top of everything else, here's why this was a perfect wrestling match. Technically, you could call this a fuck finish. But it's not. People paid because for months now, Shawn Michaels had deserved a royal ass kicking. Do you know what Shawn got in this match? 9 royal ass kickings. He was destroyed.
And 16 stitches.
16 stitches. So if you want to see Shawn Michaels get your ass kicked, you got your money's worth. If you want to see Taker get his hand raised in victory, well, you're going to have to pay now to watch Taker do battle with this monster Kane. See where that goes. And of course, they have Shawn set up to do battle with Brett at Survivor Series, which we will talk about in great detail in the coming weeks.
You know, I'm glad that I watched this match today and not before the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, because I loved the ladder war, but man,
nope.
The vision at the end of that show of both Young Bucks sitting on top of that ladder, smiling and flexing with their belts after the fucking ass kicking they took in that match. Meanwhile, Shawn is dead. I don't know who, the hand of God, lifted him up and put him on the Undertaker. This man's a corpse. And they send out Triple H in China, and they pick his body up out of the rubble, and they start dragging him to the ropes. And here's a key. Let us remember our friend Ravishing Rick Rude, who every single time Ravishing Rick Rude is with DX, or the Clique as they are called at this point, he looks like he'd like to be anywhere but hanging out with the Clique.
That's true.
He clearly cannot stand Shawn Michaels. He clearly cannot stand Triple H. Probably doesn't care one way or the other about China. He was hired. This was the job he was given. You hear his promos. You can tell he just hates everything. He fucking leaves like 2 weeks later. Rick Rude ran his ass down to the ring, and with the look of respect on his face, he fucking sits there and he herks those ropes open to let Shawn Michaels out of this ring. Because Shawn Michaels was a total asshole during this period. He was a complete dick. But you know what? He was so fucking unbelievable. And Rick Rude, a great worker himself, probably watched this whole match and went, I gotta hold the ropes open for this fucker. I've gotta let this guy out. The respect that everybody had for Shawn Michaels as they dragged his ass out of the ring is amazing. And boy, he sold it like he was dead.
Oh, yeah.
They showed up on Raw the next night. What do you do that for? Should have been out for a year.
I actually watched Raw first. And now that I'm sitting here watching this now, I agree. He should have done his promo. The first scene in Rocky 2...
He should have been wrapped up like a mummy with
Yes.
somebody that was reading it for him.
The first scene in Rocky 2, it's been many years since I've seen it, so forgive me if I get some details wrong, but it's Rocky and Apollo having a discussion in the hospital after their fight. And Rocky has to like wheel himself down the aisle just to talk to Apollo. That's how Sean should have been. He should have cut this promo from the emergency room.
Cameron and I watched the ROH pay-per-view on Friday, and the ladder war was very violent.
Yeah.
And he was okay with it. You know what I mean. And so I sat down to watch this, said, Cameron, come here and check this out. You got to watch this match. And I was explaining to him that Kane had not been seen or heard of in WWE until this very night. And two things. Actually, just one thing. When Kane came out, my son said, "That's Kane?" Because you see, my son has never seen Kane with a mask.
How's that possible? He wore a mask last year.
He hasn't seen him with a mask.
Wow.
Had no idea.
This is what Kane should look like.
Absolutely.
This mask is awesome.
But yeah, he was we got done and he declared that the best thing he's ever seen.
Yes.
Wow.
Wise young man.
How about that?
Need to donate to his college fund for that.
Well, it was amazing. And that did lead us to Raw, where Sean was back, baby.
In full effect.
Yes.
Was he ever?
So, October 6th, 1997, Raw 228, the night after Bad Blood. So the show opens with Vince McMahon in the ring, explaining to the audience that Brian Pillman had been found dead in a Minnesota hotel room on Sunday. Had Brian's picture on the screen, the whole roster was on the stage for the 10-bell salute. So this is sad, obviously, but the thing that was most sad about it was the camera started just zooming in on different people for their reaction, as they're all just hanging their heads silently, but so many of the guys that showed up on camera only had a few years to live themselves.
Yeah.
This is like...
Welcome to the 90s.
Yeah. This is like an omen. Everyone who appeared on camera on this segment was soon to go.
Melanie Pillman flat out said, this needs to be a wake-up call to a lot of guys in this business. I don't think it was a wake-up call to one of them.
Took a lot more. Tragedies.
There was not one tragedy that led to guys having...
Changing
reconsidering
habits.
this. It was a wellness policy.
In the big picture, you're right.
Listen,
when
when Eddie Guerrero died, I will not mention any names, but about 2 weeks later, I was watching SmackDown, and there were a couple of guys there who had lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks.
I recall.
And I was like, oh my God. Something finally has happened that has caused these men to rethink what they're doing. 2 weeks later, right back to the same old size.
No, you are right. I'm thinking. I'll give you the specific example I'm thinking of. Rob Van Dam has talked about how when Louis Piccoli died, Rob went up and immediately flushed away all his somas because he was scared. So, anyway, out came Shawn Michaels, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and China.
Keep in mind, by the way, that Hell in a Cell match, they got word that afternoon Pillman was dead. They still went out there and had that match.
Yes.
And then they do this 10-bell salute, and they go to commercial, and they come back, and Vince is like, hey, we're back here for Monday Night Raw. All excited.
Yeah.
Then the show just went on. Then he dragged Melanie out.
I'll get to that. Yeah, there was no tribute show. There was a tribute segment, as all these guys who've been working with Brian every day for years had 5 minutes to, not even that, 3 minutes to say goodbye, and then on with life. So Michael Cole is out there to interview them and to be humiliated. This may have been the first time an interviewer was given the terrible question, Shawn Michaels, your thoughts on Bad Blood? So he was just out there, Cole was, to be humiliated. They were giving him wet willies, they were giving him wedgies. Shawn noted that as much as people said he took a beating, the fact is he was there, Taker was not. He said this while checking himself out on the Tron. Shawn's out there playing the bully in slacks and a polo shirt. Make me laugh. Let's see. There was a bring back Strike Force sign. Didn't happen.
Yeah, it did. A couple years later.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was an MMA promotion.
That's not what it meant.
Oh.
Shawn noted that unlike these guys you see on some other wrestling shows, he was the icon who would still go. Said they demanded Shawn's performance of Hell in the Cell. Minutes passed. They buried the audio crew, the video truck guys. And finally, what shows up on the screen but footage of the Madison Square Garden curtain call, with Razor Ramon and Diesel hugging and raising the hands of Shawn Michaels and Hunter S. Helmsley in a steel cage in Madison Square Garden. And Shawn goes, well, look at that. But I was a good guy. And Hunter, you were a bad guy. Vince's reaction to this was classic. Now, I will say this. When they do this kind of thing in 2016, it goes over most people's heads. This was 1997. There was no Twitter. There was not really a World Wide Web for most people. A few people had dirt sheets, but let me tell you, no one in this building had any idea what this footage in Madison Square Garden was or why it was so controversial. No one had reacted to this in any way. So Shawn buries Vince. Said Vince made an ass out of himself long before Shawn got involved. Vince hurriedly throws it to break. They come back, Shawn and Hunter are still out there until the Hart Foundation come out. Brett said Shawn was scum and a degenerate. He also said Hunter and Shawn were homos. Hunter was sure to clarify he was no queer. It was funny because Brett's talking. He says, you're a homo and your buddy's a homo. And Hunter grabs Shawn Michaels and says, oh, I'm no queer. And he stops. Like this awkward pause, and Brett just keeps going. So Brett continues. He says he drove Shawn's boyfriends Diesel and Razor out of the company, and Shawn's next. Challenged Hunter to a match tonight and vowed to kick Shawn's scrawny little ass at Survivor Series.
You know, first off, Brett and the Hart Foundation were so gotten to.
Oh, yeah.
You see Shawn and Hunter were they were fucking howling at what these guys were coming up with. Like, as soon as Brett called them homos, Brett and Hunter just looked at each other, or Shawn and Hunter just looked at each other like, dude, did he really just call us homos? That's how mad we've got him. Mm-hmm. He's lowered himself to this. They were having the time of their lives trolling the Hart Foundation. And man, God bless Brett, but he was I was like, come on, dude. Like, you're embarrassing yourself out here. That's number one. I forgot number two. But hey, that was a hell of a number one. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So the curtain call bullshit. Everybody loves, this stuff was so great with DX and this and that. They were still getting their asses handed to them by Nitro. All of this inside Vince Russo curtain call bullshit, and Jim Cornette, speaking of gotten to,
right?
Jim Cornette going out there cutting a promo for the company, crying about WCW and Eric Bischoff and Hall and Nash and all of this. It was so embarrassing. And they were getting manhandled by Nitro. You know when they turned the ratings war around? When a fucking pro wrestler won the fucking world championship from another pro wrestler, Steve Austin. Didn't have anything to do with any of this inside bullshit. It was all a professional wrestling feud and a guy catching fire. All this stuff, so overrated. And people kept doing it for 19 more years.
Still are.
God.
So they leave. Shawn, for the first time, says he's got 2 words for Brett. They were the same 2 words he has asked for over the following 2 decades. And then he went on forever, running down the Harts and talking about how great he and his friends were. His music plays, and crotch chops aplenty ensued.
I really did like it, but man, it went on forever. And it wasn't even 20 minutes. It was like 16 minutes, and it felt like an hour.
The first match was in the ring 20 minutes and like 20 seconds after this.
Yeah. But I will say, having gone back and watched it just... because it happened fairly quickly in the grand scheme of things. It's only been like a month, maybe a little more, but the evolution of DX, knowing where it's going, is something to behold.
It really is. Brett called them degenerates, but they're still the Clique.
Mm-hmm. Headbangers versus Godwins in a lumberjack match.
The Headbangers versus the Godwins in a lumberjack match with nothing but geek lumberjacks.
Geek lumberjacks everywhere. It was announced that the Headbangers had lost the titles to the Godwins at the pay-per-view the night before, which means I can confirm now. The Headbangers had the worst championship reign I've ever seen with any belt in any company. Let's review. They won the belts in a throwaway random 4-way where it was considered a major upset when they escaped with the titles only due to Steve Austin's interference. They spent weeks getting their asses kicked in terrible matches, and they lost the belts to pig farmers in a match that had no build for the pay-per-view.
That about covers it.
Holy God.
They were so broken up over losing these titles. The first thing that happened is, in this match, Mosh dove over the top rope and was body surfed
Yes, crowd surfing
around the ring.
with the Lumberjacks, because
Hey, that at least makes sense. That's the only thing I've ever heard of in either matches that actually makes sense.
that is what was big in the 90s, and these were 90s music.
They were headbangers, dude. That's what you do. You body surf. He was mosh, like in a mosh pit.
I understand.
That's where you
Brian.
body surf.
Well, here's the bad news.
The rest of it sucked?
He stopped body surfing and began to wrestle.
Oh, man. It was horrible.
There was a point where Phineas hits a back elbow, and he stands over this headbanger and says, I could see the wheels turning in his head. Should I do a splash? Should I do an elbow? And I don't know what he decided, but the next thing I know, he was just on the ground. I have no idea what happened.
All I know is at the end, one of the headbangers did a move, and then the guy was on his back. And so what was going through his mind was, I must cover the man. And so he just got on all fours over the guy. Craig's yawning over here. That about covers
It's appropriate.
this match.
There was a...
My point is, he couldn't even make a realistic fucking cover.
No.
He just got on all fours over the guy. I was like, come on, do something.
Do you remember when we had to work with Livewire on how to make a cover?
Oh, yeah.
I'm on my back.
He would be doing a plank.
Basically.
He did
He's
a
like on
plank
his
over
hands
you.
and knees over me. He's not touching me. And so I sat up, and he looked at me very confused. Indie wrestling, everyone. So, ref got bumped. Lumberjacks brawled. Headbangers won with a schoolboy. It was a non-title Lumberjack match. I guess this feud is going to continue.
Wish it would have been a non-lumberjack non-match. Could have just watched something else.
They plugged Jim Cornette cutting a promo on Eric Bischoff. We'll get to that. Los Barricos cut a promo on Marc Mero. I swear in here that the whole tone of this promo was essentially a Spanish version of "Who the fuck is that guy?" It was totally Conor McGregor by in that one line because they didn't know who Marc Mero was. So it was Mero versus Miguel Perez.
Okay. Marc Mero has been gone for a while.
Yeah, he had a knee injury.
Now he's back, and they say, Marc Mero's got a new look. Well, he shaved his head, and he looks more generic than ever. Marc Mero's now a boxer.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's way more boring than before. And then they go, Marc Mero says he's got a new move he's going to debut tonight. And I'm thinking, let's see. His last move was a fucking shooting star press. What could this new move be that Marc Mero is going to debut tonight?
Certainly it would be better
It's the TKO.
because he's a boxer, Brian.
The total knockout. It's not cooler than a shooting star press.
Everything about this was a fail.
Sable was out there.
Total knockout was a fucking wrestling move. It wasn't even like a punch.
No.
He was a boxer that did a wrestling move at the end.
Now that I think about it, keeping in mind I watched these shows several days apart, Diamond Dallas Page stole it like an hour later.
That's right. He did it on Nitro.
Jim Cornette did what can only be called a shoot promo.
Oh, God.
This is the one.
I love Jim Cornette, but what in the hell were they doing?
This confused me at the time. It kind of still confuses me, but more I'm just thinking it angered me about how dumb it was. So what Jim Cornette came out to do here was talk about how promoters and fans were disrespecting great wrestlers like Arn Anderson and Ric Flair. Instead, we're talking about how great the New World Order were. He buried Kevin Nash, who is not, in fact, on Raw. Buried Scott Hall, who is not on Raw. Buried Sean Waltman, who is not on Raw. Called Eric Bischoff, who is not on Raw. A Mark who spent a billionaire's money to hang out with macho guys and long hair to make it seem like he had a Big Johnson. And he was talking about this, said promoters and fans need to stop caring about the NWO, care about great wrestlers like Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. And he mentioned one random Raw guy, Mankind. He liked Foley. But that was it. He came out here for 3 minutes to talk about the main promo on Nitro and bury the heels and put over the faces.
I was just thinking, as a fan, If Nitro is starting to bore you, but you watch Hell in a Cell and the main event was just so awesome, and this show has been the Shawn Michaels interview at the beginning. I mean, it seems kind of exciting. And then they put this on television, and it's just embarrassing as a fan.
Oh, yeah.
I would have been so embarrassed to be a Raw fan watching this.
It seemed very low rent.
It was very low rent. They were crying because they were losing. That's exactly how it came off.
Rocky Maivia versus Davey Boy Smith. Jerry Lawler's going on about how, you got to give credit to the Hart Foundation. They could have taken a day off after Pillman's death, but they showed up to wrestle. And just like, let's not talk about that anymore.
He turned it into a storyline. But let's be fair, Jerry Lawler turned his own death into a storyline.
Yes. Lawler, he's been doing this for so long, he can no longer discern between real life and work. We got what I believe was the debut of the People's Elbow, or at least a primitive, understated version of it.
You know what, though? To a degree, Lawler's right. I mean, Bret Hart, Owen Hart, all those guys, they could have asked for the day off.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Yeah. So, the evil flag-waving Englishman was the crowd favorite here against the black guy. And he made his comeback and won with a power slam. And the nation brawled with the Harts afterward. They showed Austin at the pay-per-view interfering to grant Owen Hart the IC title win against Farouk. Steve Austin came out for a promo with Vince. It was the ultimatum segment. They repeated one of three things would happen. Either Austin would get doctor's clearance, or he would sign a waiver absolving WWE of all liability should he get hurt again, or Vince would fire him.
This was an amazing negotiation here.
Mm-hmm.
Austin says, I didn't even go to the damn doctor. So I certainly don't have a doctor's note.
Yeah.
Vince had his termination papers in hand, both men playing hardball.
Oh, yeah.
Neither man backing down. It was so amazing because neither man backed down.
In the end, no.
And they both got what they wanted.
Yes.
And there wasn't one moment where you thought either man was stupid or a coward or a numbskull or an idiot.
Or lost.
I mean, Vince was supposed to be a babyface owner, so he had to save face. Mm-hmm. And Steve Austin was your top heel, but he was your anti-hero, whatever you want to call him. So he had to save face, but he also had to not back down from Vince McMahon. Mm-hmm. It was actually so incredible how successful this was.
Yes.
When you watch the show nowadays.
Yes.
The same fucking guy's writing it.
So long story short, Austin agreed to sign the waiver, but he had one more demand, which is that I'll sign that waiver if you give me an Intercontinental title match against Owen Hart. Vince said, I agree to that. And he offers a handshake, and Austin says, no, I'm not shaking your hand. You bring me a contract next week, I will sign that contract, and then I will sign your waiver. And here's the other amazing thing about that. Not only did Vince come out of this looking good, not only did Austin come out of this looking good, but they managed to drag the storyline out another week without having Austin really do anything.
That's right.
This is brilliant.
This began in late August. It is now early October. Yeah. They have found a way to get this guy on TV every single week in 9,000 segments. And he can't do anything.
No.
And they stretched it out another week.
I think the only physical thing he did was clobber Owen with a slammy that one time.
And boy, did he ever.
And he,
if I recall correctly.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that. At this point, Farouk and the Nation appeared on the screen.
Why?
Because Austin didn't interfere the night before.
Fair enough.
Farouk then cut a great promo.
Dude, it was a great promo.
So Austin thinks he's a tough guy because he uses the word ass. Where I come from, the only time we use the word ass is to say your ass belongs to me. And Austin, your ass belongs to me.
Talked about how the streets were so tough that he had to eat collard greens without a fork because they couldn't afford a fork.
Only one serving, he had to fight his own brothers for food.
I was like, you couldn't afford a fork. Like, you can just grab a fork anywhere. I can go to the Safeway and grab a fork for free.
Yeah.
That's a tough life.
Yeah, I did have a tough life.
I've never heard of anybody who didn't have a fork.
Welcome. Great expectations for Brian Alvarez.
I guess so, man.
I borrowed one from Abdullah.
That's a rough life.
That's right, yes. So,
dude, I thought for sure Abdullah was going to fork me.
I tried to bribe him.
I've never been so intimidated in my life. Like, I've stepped on the mat with guys who are like 300 pounds. I've never been as intimidated as when Abdullah the Butcher, a short little old man, was just sitting there in the same room looking at my head.
Yes.
With lust in his eyes.
This fucking guy away from me.
Forehead, thinking, My fork would go perfectly there.
Dude, look at that virgin skin on that forehead.
That's right.
I'm sure he wanted to cut me. Positive. I even told him like I was getting married soon. I was hoping that might deter him.
Anyway, Austin replied, "This isn't a race thing or a color thing. It's a me kicking your ass thing. And as soon as I get my legal situation sorted out, you will get your ass kicking."
I love the way he said that. It's like in The Big Lebowski when the cops come over and they ask him what's in the briefcase and he goes, "Papers, business papers."
Yes.
It's so hilarious. And here's Steve Austin, badass Steve Austin. And he says, "When my legal troubles are over, I'll deal with you." I should see him.
He's not ignorant.
He's not. It's true. It's just funny.
Yes. All right. In case this show wasn't morbid enough, Hawk versus Owen Hart in Kemper Arena.
Man.
Yeah. Owen did a promo saying he couldn't wait get his hands on Austin again. He knew Austin had tried to attack him last night, but it had backfired, and Owen had come out on top. As noted, Owen was so great at being Owen Hart. Having this match, Godwins come out, attack Hawk with a bucket. Animal comes out and attacks them. Hawk hits a top rope clothesline, but Henry Godwin punched him, and then Hawk got pinned. And I was quite certain
He may have hit him with a bucket. Maybe?
They said it was a horseshoe.
No, he hit him with the horseshoe from Uncle Elmer.
Uncle Cletus was out there.
Showed it on replay. It was not clear. But man, we watched those Road Warriors from 1986, and here's Hawk getting pinned with what appears to be a punch.
He had a horseshoe, Vinny.
I know it was a loaded punch. I did say here on replay, you could kind of see there was some kind of horseshoe involved. Okay, who wants to talk about Melanie Pillman?
You know what? Let me say this. First off, I can't imagine this ever airing in 2016.
No.
And I think the only reason it aired, this is the most appalling thing about it. It's not even that they dragged her out on television. Because, you know what? Maybe she did want to,
Give
in memory of her husband,
yes,
tell these other wrestlers to stop doing all this bullshit. Maybe she really wanted to do that. But to fucking drag it out as a way to build up ratings because you're embarrassed that Eric Bischoff is beating you in a wrestling war, that was by far the most appalling thing about this. They used her to try to win 1 week's ratings.
I think the saddest thing about this to me was the fact that the woman was visibly upset, but there were no tears. It's almost like she kind of saw this coming.
Probably did.
Yeah.
And she wasn't sobbing. She was upset, but it wasn't.
She got to crying later.
You know what I mean?
Talking about the kids.
I don't know. It was almost like I said, like she saw it was coming and it didn't really come as a big surprise to her.
They talked about his car accident, the prescribed medicine. Vince was sure to clarify that. Painkillers and prescribed medicine is what the only cause that could have been for this young man's death. Vince even noted he was in perfect health. He talked about wanting this to be a warning for other wrestlers. Talked about all the orphans left behind. Her stepdaughter, who is Brian's daughter, who had now lost her father and whose biological mother had committed suicide years past. Now, part of me wants to think that Vince, part of him wanted to do this as a public service. And
I'm sure there was part of him that
wanted it to be a warning. And I think he was just the exact wrong person who had no idea how to handle subject matter like this.
Well, even if he were the right person, this should have just been at the beginning of the show.
Yes.
Do it with the other Brian Pillman stuff,
yes,
and then have your wrestling show.
That too.
The fact that they're like plugging it. Hey, we're going to commercial, but make sure you come back because Melanie's gonna be talking about her dead husband.
We're gonna talk to a widow.
Dude,
this was they found his body Sunday morning. This was like 36 hours later.
Yeah.
So Vince, I guess, is trying to make conversation or ask questions. How are you going to support these 5 children now? Jesus Christ, dude.
That's when I wanted to reach through the camera.
Oh, my
and just
God.
choke him.
What are you thinking? So, at last, Vince wished her well, offered her condolences. They had a Pillman memorial tribute video. And it was talking about his childhood throat cancer and his 36 throat surgeries. Jim Ross doing the voiceover, talking about his football career. And unfortunately, this was obviously before they had conquered the world, and they had all the footage and everything. So all the footage they had of Pillman was just of his run in WWF the past year or so. They also sure to say Brian Pillman's accident was the fault of a drunk driver.
Public service.
Yeah. And then it ended. Next scheduled match was Truth Commission versus the Hardy Boys. Hardys were in the ring when the lights went out.
Jeez.
And out came Kane.
Oh, the bump that... And actually was mostly Matt, although Jeff managed... I've never seen a man... So what happened was Matt's outside, and Kane picks Jeff up over his head, and he throws him over the top rope, and Jeff's brother catches him.
Kinda.
And he actually did catch him. But in catching him, Jeff still managed to hit every last single part of his body on the middle ramp.
Yes.
And you just watch, and you're like, these guys ain't going to be wrestling in 5 years. They're going to be done. And now here we are. They're on the top of the wrestling world.
Well, Matt is in fact broken.
He is broken. They're both broken.
And Jeff's obsolete. So there you go. So Kane comes out, and I watched this before Hell in a Cell, so the best mask Kane ever had. Never should have changed this mask one iota. Arguably his best gear. He just looked so freaking cool. And he came out and he had cool music and a cool entrance and a cool red light gimmick. And it worked for him because he's supposed to be from hell. Unlike Sin Cara, who just had blue lights for no reason. He chokeslammed these weirdos and threw them out of the ring. And Paul Bearer does this promo saying Kane lost an eye in the fire. And they zoom in on that one, the contact he had, the blue eye.
Grew back over the next couple of years.
Yeah, were we supposed to think it was a glass eye?
Sure.
Actually, I wonder if he still has that contact in now. Does he? I don't think he does.
I don't know if he does or not. I know there was a time after he unmasked where he did. Like in the Lita marriage angle and all that. So, Kane just stood there and looked scary, as he did for many years, actually. Bearer cuts this promo about how every time Taker closes his eyes or walks into a dark room, he's going to see Kane. He's going to remember the fire. He welcomed Taker to his worst nightmare. And this was basic and unoriginal and cliched and oh so very great.
It was awesome. Paul Bear's the best. Whenever Paul Bear calls himself the Fat Man, I laugh every time.
Well,
Love this guy.
Fat guys are funny. Bret Hart versus, as he was announced for I think the first time, Triple H.
Yeah.
That was the ring announcer. Lawler buries Vince for pretending to ignore WCW.
Well, maybe they chose that as a rib because Bret had said that he knew what all of the H's stood for in...
I guess so.
And then he said HBK. And then he mentions it's Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And then he says it's homo and homo. And I've been waiting 19 years for what the third H stands for. I still don't know.
So Vince is losing his mind here, saying WCW only exists because of the WWF.
By the way, somebody on Twitter, I haven't played it yet, but apparently there is proof out there that Chris Jericho did in fact steal Stupid Idiot from Bret Hart.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
I knew it.
So Ross was talking about the match the night before, said it was the best cage match of all time. And Vince, slaps the table. It's not a cage match. It's beyond a cage. It's a cell. Shaw makes his way down to ringside. He's cross-chopping the fans, and he takes the Canadian flag in Bret's corner and sticks it up his nose. And I think I've mentioned this before, but every week on Raw, something is taken and made a video package that is replayed 1,000 times.
Yeah.
All of these shows seem important. So Shawn and Hunter were such assholes that they were getting booed here against the evil Canadians.
That was their idea.
The world's largest paper airplane hit the ring. The ref kicked it aside. Bret gets the sharpshooter. Hunter gets the ropes. Bret tries the ring post figure 4, but Chyna stops that. Shawn lays Bret out with a super kick. Bret gets counted out, and the Click ran for the hills. And there you go. That was Raw.
I can't believe I failed to mention this in my review of the TNA pay-per-view, but it reminds me when you talk about the paper airplane. Somebody made this big-ass giant paper airplane, and they threw it into the ring. And when it landed, everyone cheered.
Yeah, there was a pop. The plane got a pop.
Yeah. And it's reminded me that on the TNA pay-per-view. I can't remember what match it was. This was before the Great War when the show turned around. Just some boring random match happening. Power goes out. It's black in the building. The fans start chanting, "Pay your light bill." And then the lights go back on, and you should have heard the pop when the power came back on. It was the biggest pop of anything on the show so far. It's amazing when the fans can entertain themselves to that degree.
Through this. Retro Raw number 229, October 13th, 1997.
And what a
historic show.
They're all historic. Every one of them.
Everything on this show seemed like the very first time something important happened. It opened with a video package highlighting the Legion of Doom, their career and championships around the world, and they're out of makeup and out of character talking about the careers. And then out of nowhere they announce if these guys don't win the tag titles tonight, they're going to retire.
Crazy.
What?
Yep, it is exactly like Dolph Ziggler. And in fact, it was done the exact same way. And in fact, it had the same result. It was
in a shittier match.
Copy. It was a much shittier match. It was a much... Miz is better than these hog farmers.
Oh, yeah.
I'll give him that.
Vince brought out the Hart Foundation for a promo. In another universe somewhere, Bret Hart, Steve Austin, and John Cena formed a mega faction called Team Jorts. So they noted Davey Boy was not there. He was celebrating his anniversary and his birthday.
You know what is funny about the jorts is people were so mad for so many years that John Cena sported jorts, and he was far from the only one. The biggest babyface star in the history of this business wore jorts.
Brian, he wore them 10 years after they had went out of vogue.
What's your point? This is wrestling. We had mullets
in the late 90s.
All the way into 1997. Everything is 10 years out of date.
So he asked Bret about his loss to Hunter Hearst Helmsley last week.
Which reminds me, Nikki Bella was wearing jorts. I don't see you complaining about that.
Those were not jorts.
Those were jorts.
They were
Those were
jorts.
very jorts.
Jorts, right?
She wears jorts.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vinny, for explaining that joke.
Anytime I can break out in song, I must take part. Anyway, the Click interrupts Bret's promo. Said Bret was boring and old and jerking the curtain on Sean's card. Sean demands they play the footage of him sticking the Canadian flag up his nose. Hunter said he was younger than Bret and also had a bigger dick.
No, he didn't say that.
He didn't exactly say that.
I'm paraphrasing.
I mean, he said down there, and Sean looked right at it. And
I believe he held up his hands very far apart as if to indicate my penis is huge. Bret wanted no part of this, by the way. Very clear. He thought this was all just humiliating. They showed Chyna and Sean laying Bret out last week, so Triple H could win by countout. And it's Sean and Hunter being goofballs, and all I'm thinking is, who in the hell thought this act needed two straight men? Why is Rick Rude there? What did he ever lend to this group?
they didn't even want Rude there.
No, I don't blame
Vince
them.
just needed a role for the guy.
Yeah.
And he wasn't long for it anyway, so who cares?
Bret called them degenerates, dared either of them to come fight. Everyone cheered. Sean said he had beaten Bret for the stupid piece of tin at Mania. He would do it again at Survivor Series. Hunter teased accepting and said, nah, I already beat you last week. And finally, Sean says, you know what? Everyone says Generation X gets a bad rap. Always being called degenerates. D-Generation X. Is that us? D-Generation X. Triple H. HBK. Chyna. Ravishing Rick. We are D-Generation X. You break the rules and we will break them. Yeah!
You make the rules and we will break them.
What did I say?
You make and make is what you said.
Fuck. Well, it turns out I'm not as cool as Shawn Michaels.
Shocking.
Well,
write that down.
Took 41 years for us to figure that out.
Yes.
It's a good promo. They are very, very annoying.
This is the point.
That's their role.
Yeah.
Their role is for you.
But it does not turn the channel annoyance.
Well, I'm sure to some people it was. But
I'm sure to a lot of people working with them.
the idea
It was
is
get the hell out of this company annoyance.
you want to see somebody beat their asses.
Yes.
And that's the whole idea behind this. Now, this D-Generation X, Rick Rude, there was a lot of good groundbreaking stuff that they did, but you could already see the bullshit that Vince Russo was sneaking in there. Talking about the world title as a piece of tin around the guy's shoulder. and he was going to win that piece of tin at the Survivor Series.
Yeah.
It's like, give me a break. Why would you ever say that about the World Heavyweight Championship?
Why are you even fighting for it then?
Even if you were a degenerate, you would never say that. The belt is something that is to be respected. Anyway. Yeah, that made me mad. That made me want to beat Vince Russo's ass, but not Shawn Michaels.
Brett vowed they would not make it to Survivor Series. At this point, the Nation of Domination came out and nothing happened. So go to commercial. They come back. It is Owen Hart versus Kama.
Good God. What a bad match.
DX comes out on the stage and distracts Owen. Then they stole the headsets from JR and Vince so they could do commentary. Really, the only thing that matters is what Shawn and Hunter were doing.
Triple H totally came out of his shell in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
I can't even say that DX went from 0 to 60 in a week, but it probably went from about 20 to 60 in a 1 week span.
0 to 60 is much closer.
Nah, because they were still degenerates.
Hunter especially. Shawn was pretty much always Shawn.
Hunter may have gone from 10 to 60.
All right. So they buried the Hart family for being whores. Brett was boring, had bad fashion sense, a la jorts. Rude offered them a snack, and they ate some bananas.
Shawn Michaels accusing someone of having bad fashion sense. Give me a break.
Lawler went on a long tirade about how he was friends with Shawn and Hunter, and then Shawn turns on him, quite literally turned his back to the ring to look at Lawler, and says, I used to work for you when you called the shots. You don't call any shots these days. You are not our friend. Shawn here got in his famous line about Stu Hart being dead. His body and brain just didn't know it yet. So, DX, as puppet masters, baited the Nation and the Harts into brawling with each other, and then sat back and laughed, including Shawn dropping to his belly to get a better view of Bret Hart getting beaten up by 3 men. So DX leaves and celebrates. The Nation leaves. The Harts are left lying, had to fight to get back to their feet.
Somewhere in here, the bell rang.
Sure.
I presume
there
it
was a match going on.
Disqualification.
It was not a pinfall or submission. Crowd had zero idea what to say about any of this. The turn on DX was slow. There were still people who came to cheer for Shawn Michaels.
They did all this idiocy while eating bananas.
Yes. It was
Bananas.
Yeah, you gotta get your potassium.
I see.
Otherwise, you
Austin Aries has done the same thing.
get cramps.
LOD did a quick thing saying Paul Ellering was a big part of their success. And the Godwins did a promo promising for LOD's career, your time is then, our time is now. As the world waits for the Godwins-John Cena alliance. Team Denim.
I did love when Legion of Doom did this promo and they're talking about all these old fellers that have been around forever, like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage.
Yes.
And granted, they have been around longer than Legion of Doom, but it's not like it's that long. It's not like they're talking about Bruno Sammartino and Lou Thesz.
Mosaic and Tarantula versus Max Mini and Nova.
Where do they get these names?
Not Simon Dean.
Mosaic?
Yeah.
What do most luchadors get their names?
Well, I think there were a lot of luchadors that came to this country, and someone in WWE just decided to give them a name, and they came up with Mosaic.
I don't know. There's plenty of wacky names in lucha in the U.S. and in Mexico.
You're right. I just wanted to know who came up with Mosaic.
I don't have an answer.
Probably the guy that was tiling his bathroom that weekend.
I was just blown away. Vince knew which mini was which. So these guys are flying around.
Now that I think about it, if we had another child that was a boy,
Oh, no.
we already have Paisley,
Are you a father, Brian?
so it would make sense to have Mosaic to be her brother. We could call him Moses for short. Right?
Craig, as the biblical scholar of this group, would you please tell him why this is a bad idea? He's a Moses Malone. That worked out okay.
Sure.
Anyway, Nova, the mini here, did a tope and landed on his head and nearly died.
And Lawler laughed uproariously.
And my first watching it live, I actually thought that was almost very scary, but I think he tucked his head and rolled to the back of his head. No, they showed a slow motion replay. He landed on top of his head, and a normal-sized human being would have died. They immediately went to a finish back in the ring. Max Mini gets the win. The ref counts 3. Mini sprints out of the ring to make sure Mosaic or Nova is still alive. And Nova was able to get back in the ring and get his arm raised. So thank God he's okay.
This was a whole bunch of action really, really fast, and nobody cared.
They cared about some of the high spots that the little guy did.
Yeah, they're moderately into it.
I think it was mostly children.
Sure.
The children love the minis
It's true.
because they're like children to them.
We had a commercial of Sonny offering chicken to people and asking if they wanted a breast. Attitude Era.
Why do we all look at Craig at the same time waiting for some sort of comment?
I don't know. They showed Flash Funk beating Rockabilly on Saturday Night Heat after Honky Tonk Man tripped him. At this point, the Road Dogg made his debut.
That's right.
Said Rockabilly was no loser and asked Willie Will,
Oh, that's wrong.
Willie
He debuted
Will,
with a lie.
are you with me? And Billy hesitated. He busted the guitar over Honky's head. He slapped hands with Rhodey. And we get the birth of DX and the birth of the New Age Outlaws on the same episode of Raw.
Oh, my God. And that, I think, was the end of the Honky Tonk Man. They're slowly getting rid of these managers.
That's true.
They got rid of Cletus later. Which
Boy, did
listen,
they.
Listen,
I would never come back.
at least I can understand why I have no memory of a third Godwin. Because he came and went.
He was there very quickly and did nothing.
He was there like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But Henry Godwin has been wrestling for like a year after he broke his neck.
Yes.
I'm not the only one who doesn't remember him wrestling after he broke his neck. There's
Okay.
no way.
Okay.
You remember? No, you don't. Vinny, do you remember? Do you remember Henry Godwin's post?
I don't remember if I remember.
Now,
There
see,
you go.
there you go. That means he's on my side.
I did like how they gimmicked the guitar for Hunky. They actually, when he got hit with it, the whole back fell off of it.
Sure.
That Honky Tonk smart man.
Flash Funk versus Shawn Michaels with the scheduled match.
Did they fill it up with flour?
Not this time, no.
Oh, man.
That's a New Jack thing.
I always laughed about that.
I was very sad we didn't get to see Flash Funk versus Shawn Michaels.
Hey,
That would have been something else.
Really would have.
But Kane came out. He killed Flash Funk.
Kane's music is better, and his mask was also better.
So much better.
His whole
But
outfit
physically,
was better.
he looks exactly the same.
He has aged remarkably well.
It's crazy.
For a huge man in a very hard business.
Who took a lot of bumps?
Who did?
There's a lot of big guys that didn't take a lot of bumps because they were big, but that's not Kane.
No.
He took a shit ton of bumps, and he's fine.
Oh, yeah. He's really doing great.
This is a good man for Filthy to admire.
Absolutely. So this was, I guess, not technically a match. So technically, it's not his debut match on Raw. He no-sold some kicks, hit a chokeslam and a tombstone. And then Paul Bearer cut a promo saying everything Taker wanted and dreamed of, they were going to take away. Human eye had not seen what Kane had in mind for The Undertaker. And the catchphrase here was ashes to ashes, which isn't bad, but it never caught on. So Kane leaves, and Shawn runs out and covers Flash Funk. Hunter makes a dramatic count. Chyna rings the bell. Rude declares Shawn the winner. Huge celebration. Thousands of crotch chops. Jim Ross was appalled.
Are you telling me you're not even going to point out the most memorable part of this entire thing?
I remember.
When Rick Rude called him the pecan?
Yeah.
And not the icon, yeah. I don't know.
You're the one guy that
And then
didn't
Rick-
find that to be hilarious.
And then Rick got to say his catchphrase.
he called him a
I
pecan,
know what a pecan is.
but he called him one.
I know.
And then they had to correct him.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like a nut. And then he got to say his
Come on, that's
catchphrase.
historic.
You gonna let me get in there?
The pecan.
That would be
All
historic.
right, I'm done.
What'd he say?
It doesn't matter.
Go ahead, Craig.
No.
Tell me more about the pecan.
I wasn't talking about the pecan. Rick actually got to say his catchphrase, hit the music.
That's right. After he had to correct pecan.
See, we went all the way for that.
Yeah.
Couldn't have just moved on.
I mean, how do you recap that without bringing up the pecan?
Clearly, I have failed in my duties.
That's the one good thing Rick Rude did in that entire run.
No, the one good thing he did came up later.
Oh, the coffee?
The coffee.
Okay. This was the only other good thing he did in his entire run.
LOD said the WWF had the best fans they'd ever wrestled for.
Rick Rude was so good with that pecan line.
Let's circle back.
He was so good. I have a point to this.
Hey, look, there's a dead horse. Let's beat it.
Do you remember at the beginning of this show when you said, why is Rick Rude with these guys? Because he came out here every week and he didn't do a goddamn thing. Finally, he does something of value. He reads the ring introductions and calls the man a pecan, and you no-sell it. If he did this every week, I would have been sad when he went back to WCW. But he didn't. He was shit. 90% of the time or more.
I was going to let you keep going because I don't want to talk about Skull and 8-Ball versus Sniper. And
I can keep going. So Shawn Michaels is the icon, the showstopper,
Right.
the main event. Okay, so let's think of some nuts.
How about Brian Alvarez?
Showstopper. What kind of nut is there that sounds like showstopper?
Are we allowed to do other candies?
Sure.
Gobstopper?
The Gobstopper. That would have been a good one the next week.
Oh,
The main event.
people are turning the channel right now.
Skull and 8-Ball versus Sniper and Recon. The Truth Commission did a promo with the Commandant gone and the Jackal suddenly in his place.
Yeah.
So we have had the Raw debuts of technically Degeneration X, the New Age Outlaws, and the Jackal.
This was an
Sure.
upgrade.
He was a much better promo than the Commandant.
You know when there's a bad match on TV and it's not very good and the commentary
It's my life.
is so great
Oh, that
that it
part, no.
actually makes the match better.
Sure.
And then you got those matches that are really good and the commentary is so bad it brings down the match. In this case, we had a bad match in the ring and the commentators could not have cared any less about what was
How
going on
could
in the
they?
ring.
Dude, you're not wrong.
could they?
You are not wrong.
This was horrible.
Vince and Lawler were just doing, they had a catalog. It was like they had written down with bullet points every Bill Clinton joke in the world that existed in 1997.
How ironic.
There's more now. And Jim Ross is literally begging them to call the match. It was 4 very big dudes moving very quickly. Now, I
Wasn't
watched
there
this.
some Clinton tape that they were talking about? Speaking of ironies,
I don't even know.
what the hell's going on?
Now, what I wrote. Now, I watched this show, at least the first part of this, on like Friday, so I don't remember exactly everything that happened. But here I wrote down, it wasn't very good, but can't fault their effort. So, no, you don't agree? All right.
I mean, they
tried.
They tried their best.
were alive.
It just sucked. Jackal pulled the ropes down for the DQ, and the teams kept on brawling.
Well, there was a key to that. They're really trying to push the big guy.
The biggest of the big guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was horrible. But you know what?
Never got any better.
He was better than Braun Strowman.
All right, that's fair. They recapped the DX Nation Hearts angle earlier, and Lawler says, I'm so mad at Shawn Michaels for turning down my friendship. I hope Bret Hart tears out a chunk of his hair. That was oddly specific.
Well, you know, Sean made a insider comment, and so
True.
Lawler showed him that two can play at that game.
That's true.
And I'm Jerry fucking Lawler, so don't mess with me.
That is also true.
Because there's a lot of stuff I can say.
Yes. Vince brought Steve Austin out for a promo. Said Austin could be reinstated as soon as Survivor Series if he would sign this contract. Austin insisted Vince sign first. Established that Vince could not be trusted. Lawler verified that. Brett, I hope you were paying attention. Vince pulls out his reading glasses to sign. Austin says, we got a deal. Vince says, no, you have to sign first. Then you'll get Owen Hart at Survivor Series. So Austin takes the clipboard and he climbs the turnbuckle so the world can see he signs his name to this piece of paper. And Vince says he's done. And Austin says, no, one more thing left to do. I want you to shake my hand. And Vince hesitated, and everyone in the world thought a stunner was coming. And they had a handshake, and there was no stunner. But then Vince started to leave, and Austin pulled him back and said, I could have dropped you when I wanted to. And Vince said, all right, fine, as long as you're pulling me back here. Your contract is done. You're fighting Owen Hart at Survivor Series. Why did you interfere in Farouk's match? And Austin said, well, it's not Farouk or the Nation's fault, but I want to beat Owen Hart for the IC title, so I did what I had to do to make that happen. Nation comes out. Farouk cuts a promo by the other side of the tracks.
That was a hell of a promo. Farouk walks the line with his promos, says a lot of things that you'd never get away with today, and you shouldn't have got away with in the 90s. But damn, his delivery's great.
I believe he was pissed off.
I believe every word he says.
Austin said he couldn't understand anything Farouk said,
Also true.
but challenged any of them to come down and he'd whip their ass. And one young man wanted to try Steve Austin. And Rocky Maivia turned to Farouk and said, let me give it a go.
You know what's so funny is of all these numbskulls in the Nation of Domination, they sent down Rocky to be humiliated.
The Rock runs down, and for the first time in history, let's review in the show, DX, New Age Outlaws, The Jackal, and now for the very first time, Steve Austin stuns The Rock.
I love Don Callis.
I realize he does not fit.
Of all of the things that you mentioned.
Honestly, everything that happened on the show for the first time.
That's true.
It was the first time Don Callis was on Raw.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, this was a 1 when it comes to bumps that The Rock took for the stunner.
Oh, it was his first time.
This one was downright lame.
He would get a lot more practice.
By the way, this neck thing. So they've been stalling. And finally, they've announced that Austin is going to come back at the Survivor Series. He's going to wrestle Owen Hart. His neck was not better.
No.
His doctor told him, your neck's fucked, dude. But hey, it's the 90s.
There's money to be made.
He came back, and they let him.
Yeah. So, Road Warriors did a promo talking about how great it was to do their motorcycle entrance at Wembley Stadium at SummerSlam. And I knew the story about that entrance, but I wanted to verify it. And conveniently enough, this story is part of the sample chapter of Animal's book. I believe I found it on Google Books, but here's what he wrote about that. When I tried to get off my motorcycle, I was so close to Hawk's exhaust pipe that my right boot and tights melted right onto the metal, frying my skin.
Ooh.
As soon as I felt the heat and subsequent pain, I had to contain myself from letting anyone notice something had happened. And then the match broke out, and here's what Animal said. I was relieved to see Hawk manage himself pretty well against DiBiase and Rotunda. I clearly remember his stupor having a negative impact, only when realized it might be a mistake to attempt the Doomsday device. If Hawk climbed to the top turnbuckle and fell, it would have been a total disaster. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and finish Rotunda off with a power slam. Just keep this in mind. Wow. Arnold scolded and Sable and Freddie Blassie did a laser tag commercial. Sable won and freed Max Mini, who outright said the writers couldn't think of a funny ending.
That's what happened.
Well, they didn't have 29 writers back then.
That's true.
They had 3. Maybe 4.
We had LOD talking about their look and their nicknames. They did a backstage promo about finding out tonight if they still had what it took to be champions. They said they would not let themselves be distracted like they had been last week back in the day. They did not want to sit on their laurels like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. And if they couldn't go like they used to, they wanted to retire.
Funny that you mentioned that because Savage did not rest on his laurels. Randy Savage had no laurels. He went out there and gave 1,000% every time.
On the opposite show that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, he dropped a half dozen elbows from the top rope.
In a neck brace.
That's right. Now Hogan rested on his laurels.
Oh, yeah.
After about 1985, yes. Add to the list of historic Raw debuts, Tajiri.
He's been on before.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Fuck. Brian Christopher versus Tajiri.
Hell of a match, actually.
It was.
This Tajiri was pretty good.
Shocking. He was very, very talented.
And you know what? He looks a little older now. His hair's a little bit longer. Other than that, he looks exactly the same.
He wrestled Taka like a month and a half ago, Vince.
You know what is so crazy about the 90s?
Fine.
Look at how many times we've reviewed this show. And we talk about, just last week after Brian Pillman died. Brian Pillman dies. Everybody comes out on the ramp for the celebration of his life, or whatever you want to call it. 10-bell salute. I guess it's not really a celebration of his life. But the point is, you point out, look at all these guys here on this ramp that are dead or are about to be dead. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, there are guys like Tajiri who have not aged. You know who else is not aged, which you could not even believe? Masato Tanaka. The man who took 9 million crazy headshots.
Yeah.
He's still wrestling today. He's doing fine.
Yes.
Don't even know how. Psychosis, still wrestling today. This
Tomorrow.
fucking guy dove off the post and landed on his ass on the floor.
He's in Yakima tomorrow night.
That's right.
Wrestling for Matt Farmer in Yakima tomorrow night.
In fact, all of these luchadors, Hoovy's wrestling tomorrow.
That's right.
All of these luchadors, you watch their matches and you just thought, mostly because of Larry, these men, they're going to have short careers. Yeah. They're still around today.
They're still doing fine.
It's crazy. Like you either died young or you were very well preserved. Which I guess tells you, say no to drugs.
Yeah. So, Lawler said Tajiri fights like a girl. All he does is kick you.
What?
That's what Lawler said.
That's what he said.
Bad relationships for Lawler.
There's a lot of...
Dating too many karate girls.
I would say a lot of Muay Thai women would kick Lawler's ass. Vince says he's like Antonio Inoki.
That's
The
what he
only
said.
kicking guy Vince knows. So, let's see. Christopher finally won with a handful of tights, and Tajiri then kicked him out of the ring. Well, Jim Cornette was on.
Oh. This week he's very mad at Phil Mushnick. And I will say, he cut a goddamn great promo.
Oh, his delivery was fantastic.
And I will say to be fair, that sometimes Phil Mushnick went about it the wrong way. But Phil Mushnick did get a bad reputation because a lot of the stuff you ranted and raved about, he was right. This business had a horrible drug problem.
Yes.
I don't necessarily think that it should have been shut down, but maybe a little bit of work could have been put into this industry. But man, it was so ironic that WWE demonized him the same way he demonized WWE in a lot of ways.
Yes. So Cornette says this columnist who hates wrestling and hates wrestling fans, and when mentioned a nice thing Ted Turner did, some big donation, and Mushnick said instead of a donation, he should have shut down his wrestling company. And he says, this columnist used my friend Brian Pillman's death to call for government intervention, congressional regulation to make sure wrestling is safe. He says, as a friend of Pillman, I find this appalling. We don't need regulation. We're doing just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's review this show. Brian Pillman, gone. Hawk is on the show. Rick Rude was on the show. Chyna was on the show. Davey Boy Smith was mentioned on the show. I don't think anyone else on this show after that came along. But over the other channel, there's guys like Eddie Guerrero and Ray Traylor and many others. In hindsight, I love Jim Cornette. I love the wrestling he likes. I love the wrestling he produces. I love his promos. But God, he comes off bad here. He comes off so bad.
Yeah, but you know what? To defend Jim Cornette, he was a mouthpiece. I mean, Jim Cornette is not a stupid guy. I would bet good money that he knew that Phil Mushnick was right about a lot of things.
I hope you're right.
But that's not his damn job.
Yeah.
In fact, he does the promo, and as soon as they go back to the announcers, Vince McMahon goes, amen.
Yes.
And amen again.
Yes.
Damn it. He's so proud that this man has cut the promo for him.
Goldust versus Savio Vega. The Bariquas tripped Goldust and got ejected. Savio, I'm not a huge Savio fan, but when he goes after Marlena on the floor to lure Goldust into chasing him and then catches Goldust coming with a no-look spinning thrust kick, that was the coolest thing Savio Vega ever did.
There was a spot in here where I think he hit another spinning kick, but I think he hurt his knee. You could see when he threw it that his knee kind of buckled and he grabbed it, but then he just kept going.
Yeah.
I bet he did something there.
Either that or the other possibility is because he was moving here and he was flying around, and there was a point where he had a kick that sent him flying over the floor, and he got up and he took several very heavy, deep breaths. He was not a slender man.
The Young Bucks would have been very proud of Savio. He threw many, many kicks.
He actually did. This was a super kick fiesta here on Raw. So let's see. Marlena distracts the ref. Goldust hits Savio with a loaded purse for the win. Babyface is in danger and cheats to get victory. What?
Well, there were a lot of Bariquas out there.
They were gone by then.
That's true.
They got ejected, right?
They got ejected. But there is no good and bad, only shades of gray. All right, Triple H versus the Patriot. Hunter comes out. Chyna's with him. Sean's with him. He's all ready to go. Patriot's music hits, and of course it's Kurt Angle's music. And he comes out waving the flag and riling the people up, and he's just full of the red, white, and blue. And then Rick Rude appears behind him in his suit, slurping coffee. Made sure, don't let this coffee go to waste. Take one more slurp. Then he taps Patriot on the shoulder, throws the coffee in his face, whacks him in the briefcase, throws him backstage. Patriot never appeared on the show again, and may well have never appeared on Raw again, for all I remember.
It wasn't that much longer before we didn't see a lot of the Patriot.
Yes. So Sean declares Hunter the winner. They're having a wacky celebration when Sergeant Slaughter comes out. And there was no better person in wrestling to be the dorky vice principal to Sean and Hunter's junior high jerk-off act than Sergeant Slaughter. And he is out there cutting his promo on them, and they're hiding from behind the belt from his spittle. as he is scolding the actions of R.R. Rude.
So they should have called him as an insurance man. R.R. Rude, Esquire.
He's talking about how disrespectful they are, and he says, your opponent cannot wrestle tonight, but I have found a volunteer to take your place. 30 seconds had not elapsed between the time of the Patriot being taken out and Slaughter walking out. So he found this volunteer in about 5 seconds. So eventually the replacement was Ahmed Johnson.
Oh, my God. What a replacement. That's a true punishment. You fucking degenerate. If I got the guy for you, Ahmed Johnson, who, by the way, is injured.
Yes.
He's going to suck even worse.
This may have been in one segment. I believe they may have written out the Patriot and Ahmed Johnson. Because Ahmed comes out, and DX, by the way, they're doing the whole fake fear, we're not scared thing. And then the Nation runs out to attack Ahmed. They're stomping on his bad hand with a nail through it. DX is sitting on the stage watching and eating popcorn. And LOD and Kane Shamrock run out, and DX marks out basically just because for the action. And eventually DX went to the back. So maybe they're doing the Nation versus Ahmed DX or Ahmed LOD and Shamrock at Survivor Series. I don't remember. But Animal cut a promo and called out the Godwins.
Nasty looking scar on Ahmed's hand from that announcer's desk just a few weeks ago.
LOD and Godwins had a shitty match.
You know what? They had a shitty match, but it was a great story. They did this so well. They had built it up as a title versus career match again. If the Legion of Doom did not win, they were going to leave WWE forever. And they did the whole deal where Animal gets injured outside, and all the geeks come down to help take him to the back, and Hawk's getting killed in the ring.
Specifically, Hawk is getting killed in the ring with a neck hold.
That's right. And so finally, Animal is at the top of the ramp, and he looks up, and he sees his partner in the ring.
His brother.
And he realizes, if we lose this match, our career's over.
That's right.
And here I am being taken to the back, and my friend has no hope. Son of a bitch. I've got to go back there. And he races down the ramp, and they had a couple of other schmaz little deals, and finally they do the big clothesline off the top. They get the pin. The place went crazy for the Legion of Doom beating 2 hog farmers after Cletus accidentally hit his own buddy with a goddamn horseshoe.
There's a point in here where the Godwins quite deliberately hit the ref and hit him with a slop drop.
That's right.
I don't
Trying
know
to get DQ'd.
I guess.
Because then the guys would have to leave.
So,
Actually,
yes.
they'd win, so I guess they wouldn't, but...
Yeah. So what this was, in fact, talk about how things go in circles, this was exactly the same storyline UFC had this weekend if Dan Henderson would have won.
Basically.
This time the old veterans did win the championship, so they're going to keep fighting.
But I will say Dan Henderson at 46-year-old was in way better shape than Hawk.
I believe you.
Who could not move halfway through this match. He was so tired.
So the Road Warriors are champions. They take their belts. They go to the back to party and live to fight another day. And the Godwins can take no more. And they beat the hell out of Cletus. They bloody his nose. And the show ends. Cletus is face down on the mat, bleeding there. And Henry Godwin comes up and stands astraddle Mr. Cletus. Then he pulls down the straps of his coveralls, revealing his bare chest. And thank goodness at this point the show went off the air. Because all indications were Henry Godwin was about to break his back and make him humble.
I hadn't thought about that, but it's the old country way. It's the old country way.
Yeah, the Attitude Era, even edgier than I remember.
Yeah.
That was Raw.
I'll have to go back and get the dark match notes. Find out if he
Humbled him
after the show.
Well, that would explain why we never saw Cletus again.
Well, I do have the dark match notes, and he didn't humble him
Okay.
after the show.
That's quite a relief.
I mean, at least in front of the people.
That's true.
Very well, man. Dragged him backstage.
What happens in the back stays in the back.
Wow.
On here.
Monday Night Raw, episode 230, October 20th, 1997. They did about 7 hours worth of stuff in the first segment. Let's see. Ken Shamrock and Ahmed Johnson versus Rocky Maivia and Kama. It opened with an 8-man brawl involving the entire nation and the Legion of Doom. Then DX came out on stage with signs reading things such as, I'd rather be in China, spank me Vince, who booked this crap, and the tasteful signs, Buckwheat Rules and Uncle Tom 316.
Dude.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncomfortable stuff to talk about in
There's
this show.
so much Vince Russo on this show. Wait till we get to this Jeff Jarrett promo. Which I might add is met with dead silence. Like, all of this inside stuff that the smart fans thought was just so cool, the casual fans, it just goes right over their head. They don't get it, and they don't care. And it didn't help. They were still getting slaughtered by the other show.
Not to mention it bogged down the whole show, and they had to rush through the main event because of that promo. I'm almost...
Thank God.
That's true.
I remember this main event.
So, you know, we've been watching Ahmed for like a year or two now, and he always manages to hurt people. He hit Rocky Maivia with the over-the-top rope clothesline that Cactus Jack does, but Rocky managed to get his hand and foot caught in the ropes and then fell on his head on the floor. Ahmed Johnson almost single-handedly wiped out the Attitude Era right here.
You know, well, there was always Steve Austin.
He helped.
You know, when I saw Ahmed, weren't we just talking about like a week or two ago? He got hurt again, and then he got beat up by the Nation, if I recall correctly. And then we were like, that's got to be the end of Ahmed.
Right.
He just keeps coming back.
Yes.
This time he's got a bandage on his hand, and it almost resembles a boxing glove. It's so bandaged up. And he's still throwing punches with that hand.
And sure enough, he gave Rock that big running... The first move he did nearly killed somebody. I just don't get it.
We had more DX signs, such as nice shoulder pads Vince, which I laughed at. Also, black is beautiful. Rick Rude came down, had some kind of meeting with Farouk. Ken Shamrock was completely green here. This may have been the first tag match he'd ever seen, let alone wrestled. He got the heat on him, and he cuts the guy off, and he stops, and then everything makes his own comeback. This is a terrible babyface apparel. Happened twice, actually. Ahmed Johnson is leaning into the ring, begging for a tag. It never came. Ross is screaming, "You are not John Wayne. You have a partner. Tag out."
His opponent's probably saying, do not tag on.
Maybe that's also possible.
Just stay in here.
All right, here we go. So the Warriors took the ref, and Farouk whacked Shamrock with the Halliburton, and Rocky got the pin, and Sean moved the camera while Hunter held a sign over his ass, and the cameras almost missed it, and DX ran away from the Nation, and Ahmed went after the Nation, and the Godwins appeared with the trash cans and laid out the Warriors. Less than a minute, that all happened. This was garbage. Render me speechless.
And the Godwins had new gear.
They did?
Sure.
Yeah.
You're the guy.
Well,
You are the guy.
well, they didn't have overalls on.
As I
What were they
recall,
wearing?
They were in Oklahoma this night, and they had... It was either Oklahoma and they wore Texas shirts or vice versa, I forget.
No, they were in Oklahoma, yes.
Okay, so they wore Oklahoma merchandise and scratched that out and wrote Texas on there. Even though they're from Arkansas, what do they care? Vince promised there would be a former WCW champion in the ring tonight.
And then he said, yes, I said WCW champion.
Out of my lips. Michael Cole was supposed to do an interview with the Nation of Domination, but their locker room had been trashed and they had left enraged. There's pro-Canada, pro-Hart graffiti everywhere, garbage everywhere, Canadian flag in the corner, and a lot of racism going on.
Because I know when I do a crime, I always leave lots of evidence incriminating myself.
So as you recall, Rick Rude had come out to talk to Farouk. I'm sure he was saying, you're not going to believe what the Harts have done to your locker room.
Yes.
It's funny because we'll get to Nitro later, but they did the same angle on two shows. But on the other show, the criminals were who you thought they were. And on this show, it was a swerve.
It was a frame.
It was very clear
A very clumsy frame.
that DX was framing the Hart Foundation.
So among the things we saw here, such pleasantries as Homie Stay Home, Malcolm X with a big red X through it, a cartoon head with an afro and massive lips, a slice of watermelon, Uncle Tom Go Home, We Hate You, I did laugh at that one, KFC with a red line through it, etc., etc., etc. Meanwhile, Farouk had hit the announce desk and was screaming at Vince, asking him if he was racist. As Farouk is asking Vince McMahon, are you racist? After we have seen a litany of racist imagery in the locker room wall, a fan holds up a sign reading, Farouk is hooked on Ebonics.
Yeah.
This was unpleasant.
This whole storyline is so... I mean, besides the unpleasant nature of it, we have DX who are heels, we have the Harts who are heels,
Yes.
and we have the Nation of Domination who are heels.
Yeah.
I guess this is the shades of gray. Because heel Farouk here is totally in the right.
Oh, yeah.
The Hart Foundation heels have been framed. DX are the true heels in this scenario because they are responsible for all of this graffiti and this racism. This whole thing is just such a mess.
Yeah.
And let me repeat, no good.
No.
And the biker gang with the two skinheads, they're baby faces.
Yeah. We'll get to the Puerto Ricans. I think they're on the show, too. So, Vince concludes that Farouk is blaming the vandalism on the Harts. Way to go, Vince. Farouk says he's scheduled for a match with Bret Hart tonight. He wants it now. They get in the ring. Crowd is chanting Rocky sucks as he is blowing by Farouk and everyone else on the totem pole at rocket speed. Harts never showed up. Farouk called them out again. Vince says, vandalism and racism, they're not the same thing. Not always, but in this case, very much yes. Very much they are. Let's see. Harts slowly come out on stage, putting their jackets and belts on because they were not prepared to come out. And Vince says if the Harts were responsible for what had been done to their locker room, then he hoped Farouk kicked Bret's keister. So we finally got Farouk versus Bret Hart.
Shouldn't Bret have just come out with a mic and said, dude, we didn't do this to your locker room? They were framed.
Yeah.
And then called out.
Do you think we'd be dumb enough to leave Canadian flags behind?
And they just came out and, hey, all right, let's fight.
Maybe they don't have a monitor in their locker room.
They were watching Nitro. So 10 seconds in, DX came out again, hit the announce desk. Said Bret was a racist and an even worse person than they thought. Bret finally went after Shawn, which somehow kicked off a brawl between the Harts and the Nation. DX left. The match kept going after the break. Crowd was totally cheering for Bret.
What's it take to get DQ'd in this company nowadays?
I have no
Thank
idea.
you.
I have no idea.
Big brawls on the outside, hitting both sides, hitting the two guys that were in the match itself. No DQs.
Yeah.
On the outside of the ring.
Somewhere in the commercial break here, by the way, I should add there was a commercial where the Headbangers got beat up by toys.
Probably a better match than most of their matches.
It was, in fact. Bret tried the ring post figure 4. The Nation and Harts brawled again. Steve Austin hit the ring and stunned Farouk. Now, this point to the show had been like 25 minutes of bullshit. Absolute unmitigated bullshit. But I will say, when Steve Austin came out of nowhere and hit the stunner in the ring, they cut to the hard camera. The building was shaking.
Yeah.
In an arena.
And it's so wacky because, as we've established, Farouk was a babyface here.
Basically.
He was in the right. And then Steve Austin comes and stuns him, which, of course, everybody cheers.
Yeah.
And Steve Austin's a babyface. This whole thing is just so bad.
So Austin stuns Farouk. Bret has no idea what's going on, but he's happy to take the pin. And here I wrote, I am totally fucking exhausted by the show, and it's less than 30 minutes old.
More to come.
Well, here's a good time for a nap. Announcers are raining down the show when Jeffrey Jarrett came out in a suit with no music or pyro. He apologized to Vince for coming out before his scheduled time. He said he had been buried by Eric Bischoff on Nitro after he refused to take Bischoff's contract offer.
This was so bad. We've been watching all of these Nitro shows. Like, what did Eric Bischoff ever have to do with Jeff Jarrett ever on that show?
Nothing.
What the hell is he talking about? Eric Bischoff was holding him back.
I don't know.
Was there a storyline where he tried to join the NWO and he was
Quite the opposite.
turned away? Of
He
course
showed
not.
up about to get rid of him.
He buries Mongo, calls him a big football player who can't lock up.
Well,
What does that mean as a fan? I see him lock up every fucking week. What do you mean he can't lock up? I've seen him lock up and beat you, dude.
Yeah.
Talks about how you told me, Vince, you wanted me to shoot. I'm shooting right between the eyes. I'm like, this is so bad.
And it was long. So there was no heat in the sense of crowd reaction. It was a silent arena.
Yeah, they're looking at Jeff Jarrett.
They weren't throwing garbage at him.
Yeah, get the hell out of the ring.
Yes.
You moron. What are you talking about?
So he spoke for about an hour. Among the garbage, by the way, this is to the point where this interview clearly sucked and really they should have called an audible and somehow put an end to it, but he just kept going. So a Scream mask hits the announce desk and Vince just puts it on. Why not at that point? So Jarrett's going off about how the double J gimmick sucked. Last time he was in this company, he'd been booked with a drug addict and a clown and, quote, a black man who couldn't speak English. This fucking show, this episode of Raw, it's going on how he filled seats and true ratings. And I'm looking at the screen saying, when? Where? Name me one instance, because it's not tonight.
Memphis, maybe?
I suppose. He said Vince couldn't afford to fire him. And now it's time to address the rest of the roster. Oh my God, he's just now getting to the point. People weren't even bothering to boo. Brett's living in the past. Shawn can only wrestle once a week. That's another insider reference, by the way. Like, fans know what's going on house shows anyway. Steve Austin, no matter how many times you say ass, you'll always be the ringmaster. And then he said something I bet he regretted later when he said, your blasphemous merchandise offends me. You are ripping off the Bible to pad your pockets. It went on, and it went on. And the fact that anyone thought any word of this was a good idea shows completely how out of touch they were with the audience. This was a disaster.
Terrible. It's 19 years later. I just shake my head.
This came off low rent, much like Jim Cornette the last couple of weeks on Raw, and this week, as a matter of fact. You'd think they would learn a lesson.
Can you imagine if someone jumped from like Days of Our Lives to General Hospital? Start talking about how terrible the actors on Days of Our Lives were.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Christopher's...
That's not even a good analogy. Like, I can't even think of a good analogy.
There's never been anything this dumb before.
No, I cannot even think of a good comparison. Like, you'd have to take... There's nothing. Because this is a fake sport. So the only analogy you could come up with would be another sport. But you could never have a guy jump from one football team to another and then talk about how the other team held him back, even if you saw him run a bunch of touchdowns or whatever the fuck they do in football. Like, it would never happen. This could only happen in pro wrestling. And it never should.
UFC to Bellator, maybe?
No, because it's real.
Yeah.
You can't have George St. Pierre come on to Bellator and just go, man, they held me back.
They can't.
You're a champion multiple times.
Yeah, that's
you retired undefeated.
There actually have been lots of athletes who have changed teams and then taken shots at the team they left. But the key is, the team they were on, it was clear it wasn't working. It's not like they won the Super Bowl and then left and buried the guy.
Yeah, you could look at the other team and go, okay, is he telling the truth or not?
Yes.
Not like here where it's like, I was stuck with a football player that couldn't lock up. Oh, yeah? What does that tell me about you losing to that guy?
Yes.
Getting your ass handed to him by this football player that couldn't lock up. Whatever the fuck that even means as a fan. He can't lock up?
Brian Christopher versus Marc Mero. Let me say, I loved the first 30 seconds of this. Because Mero comes out and he's all serious Marc Mero now, and his fists are taped. And Christopher's totally joking on this boxing gimmick. He starts shadow boxing himself, and he's shuffling, and he dares Mero to trade hands. So he throws a punch, Mero ducks it, hits one shot to the ribs, and Christopher retreats to the corner and sells it like he's in death. Yes, I just said he's in death.
He's in death.
In death.
He was in over his death here.
So Lawler goes to put a Steve Austin hat on Sable. This made Mero angry. Mero made his comeback. Let's see. Lawler jumped in the apron. Mero was distracted. Christopher raked his eyes. Mero came back with a low blow and hit the TKO for the win. Jesus, there's a lot going on in the show.
From Johnny B. Bad to Marc Mero, the Wild Man, to random generic boring boxer.
Yeah.
Another brilliant idea here in 1997 in the WWF.
There was a great spot where after he threw the hat, Mero that is, threw the hat off Sable, he's berating her, which is more to come, by the way. Christopher attacks him from behind, and Marc Mero is forced to take a bump, but luckily, he fell into the bosom of his beautiful wife. It happened. Look it up.
Had an Owen Hart video package. Claimed he was the most dangerous man in the company as he nearly killed Shawn with an enziguri, which was a work, and nearly killed Steve Austin with a pile driver, which was a shoot. Then they showed Shawn annoying everyone. Owen Hart versus Shawn Michaels. I was just begging them, please just let them wrestle. Save the show.
They did for 10 minutes.
They got to wrestle.
They
And it was
wrestled
great.
for 5 minutes and 30 seconds, Brian.
You're taking out the commercial time.
No, that was 5:30 was how much was there.
Yeah, but if you add in the commercial time, they went 10 minutes. I'm sorry you didn't see that.
Well,
part,
neither did
but
you.
I imagined it. They went for 10 minutes, and it was great.
The cookie conversation was more entertaining than this. So
My point is, whether there was a commercial or not, they actually let these two men wrestle for 10 minutes. That's newsworthy on this show.
So Owen challenges Sean. Let's fight man on man. Leave our gangs out of it. And Sean comes out with DX, but sends them to the back. He agrees to this challenge. The Harts are shown watching backstage on a monitor smaller than an iPad.
At least they were looking at it.
Now, we've seen a lot of great Owen Hart-Shawn Michaels matches.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the first time I've seen heel Shawn Michaels versus babyface Owen Hart. It was still awesome, but it was new. Went back and forth for a while. Shawn had the elbow, but Owen ducked the super kick, hit the enziguri of death. At this point, Austin ran out. Owen shoves the ref in front of him. Austin stuns the ref and leaves. Shawn hits a super kick, but there's no ref. Brett runs out and attacks Shawn. DX and the Hearts brawl. DX pulls Shawn to the locker room. I don't know what the finish was. In fact, the announcers were bickering. What is the decision? Is it a count out? Is it a no contest? Is it a DQ?
The answer is there was no finish.
The wrestling was great. The finish sucked.
Tell you this as a fan, when the referee's knocked out, Shawn Michaels is making the cover on this guy, and they cut backstage, and Bret Hart is racing through the backstage area to get to Shawn Michaels in the ring. And I was like, oh man, here we go. Here, this is the first time he's getting his hands on him here on this show in quite a while. And he was very professional, and Shawn bumped all over the place for Bret Hart. He was selling like a madman for this guy. Probably because he figured, if I don't, he's going to punch me.
Funny how that works.
I enjoyed this. And thank God they didn't do any inside bullshit like, oh my God, he's going to pull out a chunk of his hair.
Undertaker did a backstage promo about how his whole family was dead, but it turned out his brother was alive. But he did not see love in his brother's eyes. He saw hate. He blamed this on Paul Bearer, but said it didn't matter. He would never fight Kane. And he never did.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. That was sarcasm. I was speaking sarcastically.
Undertaker used the line.
Thank you, Vinny.
Undertaker used the line, I saw the demon in his eyes.
Because I was going to get a list here of all the times they've wrestled.
It's long. It's lengthy.
I'll get Tom on the air right now.
That's true. He probably knows them all. Dude Love versus Dave. You should ask him something. What are the five best Undertaker Kane matches?
I'll ask him tomorrow.
Number one versus Chronic.
Fortunately, he's listening, so he can prepare.
That's true. Dude Love versus Davey Boy Smith. That's supposed to be the match, but Davey Boy did not show up. Kane came out instead. Dude fired up and tried to take him out. Hit the cactus clothesline, but Kane landed on his feet. He no-sold a chair shot to the head. He chokeslammed Dude on the ramp twice, once in each direction, to guarantee that Dude's head bounced off the metal.
I'm over this red light. I know you liked it, but
It didn't last long.
you can't see a thing.
It's fine for his entrance. The action in the red light needs to stop.
I watched this. I went for a walk with the baby today, so I was watching this on my iPhone outside with the sun shining. I couldn't see a goddamn thing because the fucking light was on. It was dark in there with a red light.
This does not last as long as Sin Cara's light did.
So I'm glad you told me what happened. All I heard was clanking.
Headbangers versus a mystery team, which turned out to be the blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
The in-ring debut of the team we now know as the New Age Outlaws. Road Dogg did his own introductions for badass Billy Gunn and himself.
Yeah, let's talk about how he introduced Billy Gunn. He said, "This man is the real badass of the WWF." Billy Gunn.
Rockabilly.
Mm-hmm. You
Me skeptical.
You don't think he deserved that moniker?
Fucking Ken Shamrock. Dan Severn had been there, I think.
Vader.
I just like that he's the real badass of the WWF, but he comes out still dressed like Rockabilly.
He didn't have new gear
Blue
yet.
shoulder back. So what?
What's he gonna wear? He didn't have any other gear.
He did not have to wear the day glow, the sky blue jacket with the giant shoulder pads. Could have done without that.
I also like that this was the debut of the Road Dogg, but he was so young, he only had one G on his name.
That's true.
Yeah.
Second G hadn't dropped yet. He said their journey started here and would end with the World Championships.
That was a good one.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Rare.
This is why you keep me around.
Every 9 years, I get a really good one out of you.
So, Road Dogg is cutting promos and JR from the apron, and it wasn't shown on camera, but I assume he crotch chopped them. And Vince says in the most matter-of-fact way, pelvic thrust seems to be all the rage as of late.
And Ross flipped out.
Yes.
It's juvenile. This sucks.
Billy and the Headbanger fucked up the very first thing they tried.
Oh, my God. Listen, Billy Gunn sucks, okay? Yeah. Especially at this point in his career. This Headbanger was so bad that
How
when
bad was he?
They fucked up this spot, and Billy Gunn just stops, and he looks at Road Dogg like,
What the fuck?
what the fuck just happened here, dude? Get me out of this ring with this guy.
So the Outlaws are wrestling as heels. They get the heat on Headbanger A, and it comes time for the hot tag, and there's a double down. And as Billy Gunn's crawling for the corner, the fucking Headbangers just make a tag. The babyfaces hit the ring before the heels have tagged out. Now Billy has to scramble to get over and tag Road Dogg in. Eventually, Billy broke the boombox over the Headbanger's head. It was
a boombox. Craig, were there boomboxes in 1997? Do we still have them?
Yes.
Kinda. They were on their way out.
97?
The Sony Walkman was very much in vogue. Nobody used a boom
I was
box.
walking around with a boombox in 97.
Now the Headbangers.
I mean, you maybe. Vinny, you've been out of high school for
A while.
3 years?
7? Yeah.
So you were in college, and you were in
Western
Squib,
Washington University.
right? Were you
Bellingham.
walking around the Western Washington campus, and dudes are there with giant boomboxes on their shoulders?
No, Western Washington's a hippie school. They're all walking around in unwashed clothes and acoustic guitars.
Well, see, these guys are hippies, kind of, right? Thrasher and Mosh.
No, this is hippie, like thrashing. Can't tell you how
Anyway,
many
this
hippies
fucking
I've seen
sucks.
thrashing around.
Let's just get to the point.
They broke the boombox over the Headbanger's head. It may have been a legit shoot boombox. He was bleeding everywhere. It was very loud. There's chunks of fucking radio all over the ring. Like a transformer just exploded, and the ref just counts 3.
This is reverse karma for when that Headbanger busted open that guy when he came back to SmackDown.
That's right. Let's see. Sunny did ring announcing, and as she introduced Taka Michinoku versus Tajiri Yoshihiro, becoming the first person in this company to actually know his full name, proving your earlier point you made a week or 2 ago. She was so good at being the hot girl in wrestling because she knew more about wrestling than most of the other announcers.
Still calling him Takamichinoko.
Well, that came out.
That had to have been his name in WWE. They say it every time.
The graphics don't. Maybe the graphic department screwed up.
And Sonny pronounces it correctly.
Yeah. So this was a great 4-minute match. Tajiri looked unreal here. Taka won with the Michinoku driver. Tajiri looked so good, I can't believe they let him out of this building without a contract. It was great. Jim Cornette read comments from wrestling fans who hated Phil Mushnick.
Oh my God, this was so lame.
All I have to say is that one of these wrestling fans described Phil Mushnick as deplorable.
Wow, you're right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do it as a gimmick to only read people that agree with me, but this was like on national television. They were treating it like a shoot. Like, let me read some of these comments that have been on the message board for the TV Guide Phil Mushnick column. I was like, gotta be kidding me.
And then they actually gave Phil Mushnick's address.
Well, they have the TV Guide correspondence address.
Attention, Phil Mushnick was
Yes.
on.
Yeah, it was attention Phil
It's like
Mushnick,
his house on there.
but you were
I
supposed
know.
to address it like mad as hell.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's going to guarantee to be opened. This is a great plan.
This one's ticking.
Godwins versus Disciples of Apocalypse in the main event of the show.
You know, I was watching this and I was watching on the iPhone, so you can look at the bottom of the screen and see how much time is left.
Right.
There was like 3 minutes left. And I was like,
That's charitable.
And they
this
were
is still
still coming
way
to the
too
ring.
long.
They're still coming to the ring, and there's 3 minutes left.
So the bikers jumped the pig farmers. It was 4-on-2. Truth Commission ran out to make it 6-on-4, and then they just cut backstage. There's your main event. Backstage, Mankind has returned. He's in the boiler room. He says he's the master of madness and mayhem and malice. And Undertaker perhaps did not want to fight his brother, but he had no qualms about fighting family members. So if Taker wouldn't fight Kane, then he would. Thank God the show ended.
This was not the best Raw I've ever seen.
Forgot how bad the show was.
In fact, it was terrible. It was horrible. It was deplorable.
It was.
This was Crash TV.
Let's get into this. Raw number 231, October 27th, 1997. The Nation of Domination came out for a promo. And Jim Ross explained to us, the viewers at home, that the graffiti in the Nation's locker room last week could have been construed as racist. Technically, that's not untrue. It could, in fact, be construed as racist. It could not be construed as unracist, but it could be construed as racist. Rock is out here. Before Edge has ever shown up on Raw, here's Rock in a shirt that just has a big giant R on it.
Bet that sold well.
That's the exact same thought I had.
I have never seen one. Ever.
No.
The only time I've ever seen that shirt is right here on this show. I don't think they sold one.
No.
Can you imagine going to the damn merchandise stand? These shirts run $25.
If you're lucky.
So whatever the price was in 1997, it was the equivalent, I'm sure, of $25. It's a black shirt, and on it is a giant R.
Yeah.
Doesn't say rated R.
No.
Doesn't say Rock.
No.
Doesn't say Brahma Bull.
No, not even the little bull tattoo logo.
It says R.
Yeah.
Somebody thought this was a great idea.
I don't know what to tell you. So Vince apologized to the Nation for the graffiti. Farouk was not satisfied. He wanted an apology for the past 400 years of American culture. Vince is pissed and says, "We do not allow racism in the WWF on any grounds." You just did. I saw it last week. So it's time for Rocky to cut a promo. He said the Hart Foundation had crossed a line. Now it was a black and white thing. He had dealt with racism and discrimination his entire life, but he had always bounced back up when he got knocked down.
I love when Farouk is talking about the history of racism in the United States, and there are outraged white fans,
Of course.
screaming at him from the front row.
Of course.
It's like, you had to know what you were doing here, Vince.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Yeah. So he promised the Harts would not get back up. Fans were chanting that he sucked. Farouk dared the Harts to come out and fight. And the Hart Foundation came out to accept the challenge. But first, Bret had something to say. He wanted the Nation to know that he came from Canada. And in Canada, there is no racism. He tried to explain that DX had been the one to vandalize the Nation's locker room. But before he could, DX appeared on the screen.
It's about damn time that he acknowledged this. And actually, he did flat out say, "You and I both know it's DX that did this. That's what caused DX to appear on the big screen."
Yeah.
I guess they were waiting, knowing that Bret was going to accuse them. Now, if this were 2016, Bret would have just tweeted about this a week ago and we've been done with this.
Basically, yeah.
But without social media, it took a full week for the guy to come out here and claim no responsibility for this terrible act.
So Shawn began to call Bret he called Bret and the Harts the Grand Wizard and his KKK buddies. Said Bret had appeared on the Jerry Springer show under a white hood.
When he first called him the Grand Wizard, I kept thinking, why are you calling him Ernie Ladd? Because, of course,
Wrong, Ernie, but I get your point.
that was the Grand Wizard in the WWF.
Yes, which is not a Klan gimmick.
No. Then I figured out what he was talking about.
Yes. So he's going off about how the calls him a Klansman. Says he appeared on the Jerry Springer show under a white hood, and he leans into the corner and says, "And I heard they used the N-word." At this point, the Nation snapped. They charged up the ramp to attack the Harts, and Bret was left with a gimpy angle. So the point of this storyline, when you get right down to it, is this. The Nation of Domination is so dumb, they believe the Canadians violated their locker room, and they are so violent, angry people that just the mere accusation that this group had used the N-word, caused them to fly up the ramp and attack them with violence.
That's right.
They are an ignorant, violent group. That is the message of the Nation of Domination.
Well, let's not
That's
forget.
lovely.
Let's not forget that Vince McMahon himself, when he returned to the booth as the Nation of Domination was attacking the Hart Foundation, even Vince was not convinced that DX did it. He said the Harts might have just gotten what they deserved. I was like, so the storyline is,
okay, I stand corrected.
we're all supposed to be that stupid.
The storyline is not just the Nation that's dumb, it's everyone that's dumb.
Basically.
Except apparently DX. Goldust versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Rick Rude.
Just had to say.
Rick Rude. Playing Michael Buffer, by the way. That's his role here in this company, doing introductions. He called Triple H the future of the World Wrestling Federation.
Word.
Man, what a prophet.
I was more impressed when he referred to the crowd as Tulsa tubs of crap. And one woman was furious.
You know, regarding his statement that Hunter was the future of the World Wrestling Federation, I will take any opportunity to put myself over. However, you know how many times I've had somebody tweet or email or bring to my attention that I am a prophet? Because at some point in the early 2000s on Wrestling Observer Live, I predicted that Hunter would marry Stephanie and someday run the promotion. People are blown away by my prognostication abilities. Believe me, if you weren't around then, I was not going out on a limb. The moment Hunter and Stephanie were together in storyline, I think it was abundantly clear to everybody where this was probably going. And that's exactly where it went. Now, Rick Rude here, this is a true prophet. He saw this coming in 1997 when this guy was nothing more than Shawn Michaels' lackey that went out there and had boring matches with Goldust.
That he did. There was abundant interference from China and Marlena here. My buddy Sean was over. I don't know the last time he watched Raw in 97. But he said something along the lines of, "Are you sure that's Hunter? He's really tiny."
This was the 6-month period where Shawn Michaels was bigger than Triple H.
Yes.
Never happened before, never happened again.
Wasn't close later. Wasn't even close. Okay, a lot happened at the end here. Let's see if I can get this right. Marlena went after Hunter on the floor. This distracted the ref. Goldust grabbed Marlena's loaded purse, but Chyna took it from him and waffled him with it. Hunter had a pedigree and won, and DX threw a celebration.
Yeah, the key as always is that Hunter couldn't just pin the guy after
Yes.
he got hit with a brick-filled purse. He had to lift him up. He had to drag his dead body off the canvas so that he could hit his move. Something that would continue to the end of his career. Getting his move over. And hey, more power to the guy. He got his move over. But this was ridiculous.
Yeah.
The guy's dead. Why are you lifting him up to hit your move? To further shock the ref into thinking that you did this on your own? Who cares? Sean did commentary. He loves a good fat joke. I knew we were kindred spirits.
No such thing as a good fat joke.
What are you talking about? Man, he talked about Jim Ross being fat. He talked about Goldust being fat.
Did he? I missed that one.
Oh, yeah. Any opportunity to call somebody fat, he was all over it.
Let's see.
And he is laughing.
Time for this week's stupid Jim Cornette promo. Jim Cornette is upset about people calling themselves icons. Barry's Shawn. Barry's Brett. Barry's Randy Savage and Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan. Said that WCW card last night was great. There's no way Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan should have main evented that. So if anyone was an icon, it should be Flair, Undertaker, or Austin. But that was my takeaway from this. Everyone should go check out that WCW pay-per-view last night and skip the main event.
But you know what's funny about him burying that main event? Now, don't get me wrong. That main event was historically bad. But it didn't matter that it was bad. Everybody was still watching the show, and they were into Hogan, and they were into Piper. And poor Jim Cornette, for the third week in a row, came off so poorly here, being sent out here to bury somebody. I guess hoping that fans would just stop watching the other show. Sure as hell didn't work.
No. Fail. They were in Oklahoma, so we got highlights of a tribute to Oklahoma legends, from Jim Ross to Bill Watts to the Briscoes to Danny Hodge, whom Ross called the greatest wrestler this country has ever produced. Owen Hart versus Ahmed Johnson.
All right. I'm going to try and keep this quick and not rant too much, but why am I still watching Ahmed Johnson have horrible matches here on the show with a hand injury that if it were 2016, there's no way this guy would be cleared in the ring? Forget the hand injury. He gave Owen Hart a concussion in this match because he fucking sucks. And he hurt himself all the time, and he hurt everybody else. And every single week, he's back on this show, and it's a disaster. I get it. He's big. Who cares? Fucking horrible match.
All of this is true. The only thing I can add is that, Brian, I know you don't watch a lot of hockey, but NHL season just started. There has never been a goaltender wearing more or larger leg pads than what Ahmed Johnson had on this match.
Oh, my God.
Like double thigh pads, big, thick, giant knee pads, shin pads.
Hey, you know what? Those are the things that never got hurt. He should have padded up his old fucking body.
So he used those to hurt other people. I'm assuming it was the axe kick where he got a concussion.
Yes. Well, an axe kick, and then there was a lariat that
see.
apparently rocked him.
Yeah. So Steve Austin runs out and stuns Ahmed.
Hey, I'll give Ahmed credit. He took a great bump for the stunner. The only good bump I've ever seen the man take
Probably.
was right here.
So, by the way, the Nation came out to watch at some point here. Ahmed wins by DQ. Owen keeps the belt, and the Nation leaves. I have no idea what they were doing out here. It's time for the Karate Fighters Holiday Tournament. This got me so excited.
That Ahmed match was so bad. I feel we glossed over it. It was fucking horrible.
It was a very bad pro wrestling match.
Not only was it horrible, but Ahmed, who I'm pretty sure is a babyface, because I think the Nation turned on him again after he joined them for a very brief period of time. During the match, he just randomly takes a Canadian flag and destroys it.
Yeah.
And Jim Ross, the babyface announcer, he can't handle this. He cannot justify this. And he buries Ahmed for destroying the Canadian flag for no reason. Horrible match. Owen did everything he could, which was virtually nothing, to try to drag a match out of this guy. He gets hurt doing so. But when does this Ahmed experiment end? This, to me, is far more egregious than Roman Reigns in 2016.
Oh, God, yes. Vastly. When you make that comparison, it's kind of rocked my world, but yes, you're right. So in this here Karate Fighters Holiday Tournament, the first combatants were Jerry Lawler and Brian Christopher. And they're all being wacky, and they do the karate fight, and Lawler's karate fighter wins. And Christopher starts to cry, and Lawler laughs at him and says, "Go on home, I hear your mother crying." That made me laugh. Mankind came out for a promo. They recapped Kane destroying Dude Love last week. And Mankind said Dude just wanted to make people smile and have fun. But Paul Bearer, who he blamed for this whole Kane deal, Paul Bearer had ruined that innocence. He said he and Paul had gone separate ways without a harsh word. He thought they had a truce. But now he had no choice but to make Paul's life a living hell. He was talking about the boiler room brawls and the buried alive matches when Sergeant Slaughter interrupted. And Sarge says, neither Mankind nor Kane are reasonable human beings, and I will not sanction or approve a match between them.
Let's stop for a second. Vince McMahon has a vision of professional wrestling, and we all know what it is if we've been watching for any length of time. And part of his vision is, if you're not his child, but you are an authority figure, then you're a bumbling numbskull.
Yes.
And boy, was that ever Sergeant Slaughter.
Yes.
And he always has to find someone who's just a little bit marble-mouthed and a little bit goofy and a little bit wacky and a little bit dumb and give them this job. And Sarge bumbles out here and he's doing this horribly delivered promo about Foley's unstable mental condition. I'm just thinking, okay, if this were real, have you ever watched this show? You're concerned about this guy's unstable mental position?
Yes. So Mankind says, what if I said please? Turns out saying please wouldn't help. And Mankind said, well, I want to do bad things to Kane, so first I guess I'll have to do bad things to you. And he put Sarge in the mandible claw. The refs ran out to chase him away, and it was actually awesome because usually the guy just has the hold on and they maybe grab his arms loosely, but mostly just wave their hands and shout and say, please let go. These guys came out and it was like they were the rodeo clowns and Mankind was the mad bull. And they just distracted him and played keep away until he could get Sarge out of the ring. And they played Mankind's exit music and he finally left. Ken Shamrock versus Bret Hart. They plugged the Survivor Series special, including an appearance by Hulk Hogan when he was still a real champion, not a washed-up guy having bad cage matches or making bad movies. So this match was shockingly boring. There was one or two times when they did cool MMA counters to pro wrestling holds, but mostly it was just Bret on offense in slow motion.
I liked this match. Apparently I was in the minority. I thought that Bret had a perfectly good professional wrestling match with Ken Shamrock. I thought he did a very good job carrying the guy. There were a couple of points where Shamrock got lost. At one point he did a belly-to-belly and then time just froze. And his response was, I'll make a cover. And then they just kept on going. But let's talk about the real story of this match. What?
I saw your Twitter. I know where you're going. We'll go
yes, ahead. This is fucking historic. This was a WWF World Title match.
Yeah.
Right before Montreal.
Yes.
They knew Bret was leaving.
Yes.
They could have just changed the title right here on this show. Everybody would have been talking about it.
Yeah.
Would have probably popped a rating the next week and got a new champion. And Montreal never would have happened.
Yes.
And if Montreal never would have happened, who only knows where wrestling would be nowadays? The ball that got rolling. Probably would be, I don't know. The Vince Steve Austin storyline was awesome, but it's not like Steve Austin would have been Steve Austin.
Yeah, Steve Austin would have still been successful.
Yeah, the ratings were turned around with the WrestleMania Steve Austin Shawn Michaels match with Mike Tyson. Vince had nothing to do with that as a character. He stood in between them while they had to pull apart, but that was it. Anyway, here's what I determined about this match. This is very important. This has never been talked about, including by Dave.
All right.
Bret goes for the sharpshooter, and as he's turning it over, he bumps into Earl Hebner, and Earl Hebner falls down and somehow gets knocked out. How the fuck that happened, I don't know, but that's beside the point. Bret knocked out Earl Hebner in this match. And after Earl Hebner is knocked out, Shamrock reverses the sharpshooter, and he puts Bret Hart in the ankle lock, and Bret Hart tapped out. Now, if Earl Hebner had not been KO'd by Bret Hart, Ken Shamrock would have won the WWF title. But because Earl Hebner was knocked out by Bret Hart, Bret retained the title, and he went to Montreal where he was then screwed.
By who?
Well, by Earl.
By Earl Hebner.
But the point of this is, if Bret had not KO'd Earl Hebner in this match, that never would have happened in Montreal. So at the end of the day, Vince was right when he said Bret screwed Bret. Now we can historically prove that that was a fact. It's Bret's own damn fault he knocked out Earl Hebner in this match. Otherwise, none of this would ever have happened. Crazy.
It is very crazy. So Shamrock, after Bret taps, he releases the hold to check on the ref. And then Bret whacks Shamrock with a chair, puts him back in the sharpshooter. But then Shawn runs out and drops Bret with a super kick. And he's working Bret over. Shamrock sees Shawn and snaps. Suplexes him all over the place, gets full mount and ground and pound. And DX and the Harts run out to tend to their men, and soon we have a Bret-Shawn pull apart. Which is actually underwhelming. The highlight here was two highlights. Chyna throwing Pat Patterson down and everyone gasping. And then DX very literally carrying Shawn away at the very end, as he's still waving his hands in the air trying to get back at Bret one more time.
I'm going to write a new book about Montreal. These are brand new revelations everybody's hearing on this show right now.
It seems to be a popular topic among wrestling fans.
Hey.
Perhaps you could finally tell us if it was a work or a
Dude, I'm going to
shoot.
write it right now, and it'll come out in 2017, the
20th year.
20-year anniversary.
I should leave right now. You can just get started.
I should just get started.
Brett did a backstage promo saying that here he was complaining about Shawn Michaels, but he would never have to worry about him again after Survivor Series.
This is new information. I've never seen anyone mention this before. I'm breaking news and rewriting history right now.
What a strange claim to make.
Every JFK book's got a different angle.
That's true.
This is a Montreal book with a different fucking angle.
Montreal is pro wrestling's answer to JFK.
It is!
That is true.
More words have been written about the Montreal screw job than any other incident in pro wrestling history.
Sure, that's
just
true.
like JFK.
Yeah.
And they were all written by Dave, but that's another matter entirely.
Anyway, yes, to repeat this, Brett says, after Survivor Series, I will never have to worry about Shawn Michaels again. Hey, he got that one right, at least. The new Blackjacks versus the Road Dogg and Badass Billy Gunn.
Man, this match started and Vince, in a very sad voice, explains that Gorilla Monsoon, Gino Morella, who we just saw on TV a few months ago, is in the hospital and he's very, very ill.
Yeah.
I thought, man, I didn't realize he died so quickly after. But it turns out he didn't.
Oh.
No. He appeared on TV again several times after this. But Vince sure made it sound like this was the end.
I've forgotten exactly when poor Gorilla passed away.
1999.
Oh, so he got a year and a half at least.
Yeah, 2 years later.
Okay. Huh. Well, anyway, this here match between the Blackjacks and the Outlaws was a total mess. The Blackjacks chasing the Outlaws around the ring, and somewhere in there they got pinned after a chair shot. The brawl continued after the match. The Godwins ran in. The Headbangers ran in with a taped-up boombox. Because unlike Dick Murdoch, who has a lot of money but chooses to drive a pickup truck, the Headbangers are apparently flat broke and had to tape their boombox together after it got broken over their heads. The payoff to all of this was the Outlaws destroying the Blackjacks' hats, so I guess that feud is going to continue. This was all bad. All kinds of bad. Kane and Paul Bearer came out for a promo. Bearer warned Mankind that he was just a pebble on Kane's path to destruction. They said they were going to make Undertaker's life a living hell. And again, they tried to get ashes to ashes over as a catchphrase. We were told that DX had threatened to make, quote, a startling statement of some kind. I see.
Well, he was right.
I guess he was right. DX did their promo. They're up on the screen. There's the four of them. And Rude does a brief speech. He's standing, and Sean and Hunter are sitting, and Rude and Hunter are... Sean and Hunter are sitting. Rude and China are standing behind them. Yes. Rude...
This is an important detail.
It's important that I don't know. Rude explains that Sean has something to say to Brett. And Sean stands up, turns around, and moons the camera. And Hunter's holding a sign over Sean's ass, and Sean's jumping up to get his ass above the sign, and Hunter is dropping his ass, and China is leaning forward to get herself as much a glimpse of Sean's ass as she can. I remember this angle. I'd forgotten just how much of Sean's ass was on the screen. It was not like he flashed here and there. It was all ass all the time.
Vince is literally struck dumb on commentary. He literally says nothing for like 15 straight seconds. Probably because maybe Sean wasn't supposed to jump.
That's quite possible.
His ass went into business for itself.
It did. It was not the first or last time. And then Sean collapsed on the floor in hysterical laughter. I just like, because China had been around for, 6 months at this point, and has always just been stoic. But as soon as Sean drops his pants, she's bending over, looking at his ass and smiling. First thing that's ever made her happy. Marc Mero versus Flash Funk.
Okay, listen to me. This was where, from this point forward, every segment on this show, I just kept thinking back to Jim Cornette's rant. And I'm thinking, I know that Hogan and Piper was absolutely horrible, but Jesus, we're watching Marc Mero versus Flash Funk. a sit-down interview with Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
And Legion of Doom versus Los Boricuas in the main event.
And then an Ahmed Johnson promo.
And you can't figure out why everybody was watching the other show, and you're blaming Phil Mushnick, Age in the Cage, and what was the one last week? There was one other one. Point of this is, these things are not the problem.
The problem is your show sucks.
This boring-ass Marc Mero Flash Funk match, nothing against him, but I mean, who could possibly care? And no one did. They did some moves, and then Mero won.
I like how Mero's out there with a new gimmick, and the whole story is he has suffered a knee injury and has had to change his style. Then he goes up top, it's a double jump moonsault, like all boxers do. He went with a TKO. We had the Jeff Jarrett sit-down interview.
God, who could watch this?
I don't know.
Jeff first bitches about his time in WWF.
I'm remembering this now. I watched the show several days ago.
Then he
So it's only
bitches
coming back
about
to
his
me.
time in WCW.
Yeah.
Then he's upset about the lack of opportunity they got in WCW. Now, I understand he was never an absolute tippy-top main eventer, but we've been watching every single one of those Nitros, and he was having a hell of a run.
Yes.
He was in the Horsemen, kind of. He was feuding with the Horsemen. He was working with Ric Flair, Benoit, Mongo. I realize Mongo can't fucking lock up. It doesn't matter. Mongo was over. The whole program was over.
He was on TV every single week.
And he was a star.
Yes.
I was like, what are you talking about, dude? You were way better there than you were when you were Double J. They kept you on footage of when he was Double J, and I was like, dude, you left to the right place, and now you're back.
But, Double J with a blinking hat was much better than this Jarrett.
That's true.
This Jarrett's just a boring, whiny guy. There's nothing to like here at all.
And then he says, you know, WWF live events, it's all action for 2.5 hours at the arena shows.
Oh, yeah.
But WCW, it's not like that. All the top wrestlers are over 40. And I'm like, okay, hold on. First off, I went to WCW house shows, okay? There was a lot of exciting action, number one. Number two, if you're going to, how can you bitch about WCW house shows, but also bitch that all the main eventers are over 40? Because the main eventers didn't work the fucking house shows. The house shows were all the young guys and the mid-carders and the cruiserweights and the guys who were having great matches. What the fuck are you talking about here?
I like when he said, you know, his last match is Double J. I think it was his last match, one of his last matches. Anyway, he had a great match with Shawn Michaels on one of the early In Your House pay-per-views. It was an awesome match.
It was a great match.
Then he says, I had a great match like that with Shawn Michaels, but having great matches like that didn't matter in WCW. And I thought, okay, are you just now outright saying that you failed to get over in WCW even though you were a great wrestler? You must have been a really shitty interview then. This is infuriatingly dumb. That's what this was. Like, sometimes you see something that's dumb and it makes you laugh, or it's dumb and you just say, well, that was dumb, and it passes by. This was so dumb it makes you mad.
Now, granted, he did talk about what WCW would become, but it's certainly not what WCW was in 1997. I mean, the wrestling to talking ratio on Raw is much higher than the wrestling to talking ratio on Nitro. There's way more wrestling on Nitro.
Yeah, and better. But more importantly, this isn't fucking Nitro. Why are you debating the quality of Nitro? Talk about...
Well, the whole idea was supposed to be that finally we got somebody that jumped ship here. So they must bury WCW.
I know, but that's dumb.
I know, but that's why I'm just telling you why they did it.
I understand, but I'm not mad at you. But the whole idea is, I don't know. We've talked too much about this anyway. Who cares? LOD versus Los Boricuas in, yes, it turned out this was the main event.
Dear God, I'd rather talk about Jarrett.
Well,
this horrible match. From Jarrett burying WCW to a Raw main event with Legion of Doom versus Los Boricuas. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
With Billy Gunn and Road Dogg stealing the LOD's shoulder pads.
Yeah. The highlight of this match, the Outlaws come out, they take a seat, Ross tries to interview them, they blow him off, the match begins, they tiptoe around the ring, they steal the shoulder pads, put them on, and pose and flex. That's the highlight of the match.
They get the heat on Hawk, who it's impossible to get sympathy on. And then Road Dogg goes to trip one of the Road Warriors. He trips the wrong guy. The Boricua is pinned via trip.
Yes.
And that's the end.
That is the end. Now the LOD and the Boricuas are both pissed at the Outlaws, and we get the Keystone Cops chased to the back. I will admit I laughed at that very last scene. It was at least good comedy. And then Ahmed did a backstage promo. He was screaming and spitting everywhere. Said Austin had scored on him. He was going to score on Austin. He's going to get Austin next week.
Man.
The show ended.
It's 19 years later, and I'm absolutely furious that some shithead thought it would be a good idea to put this Ahmed Johnson fella in the ring with Stone Cold Steve Austin in a bad
star,
match.
Yes.
Like, give me a break. I gotta play a song.